Thank you for joining us for another episode of Choices Were Made. Last week, we were joined by Marco to discuss the second part of his story, where he talked about building and growing his business. This week, we want to take a step away from the aesthetic lives that everyone wants to see and dive into the realities of what it's like to be a wife and a mother. As you know by now, at Choices Were Made, we don't believe that everything happens for a reason, and we speak the raw, honest truth. So let's get into today's episode.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about something you said in your intro. So why do you think you don't believe that everything happens for a reason? Or why don't you like that saying? I despise it.
It kind of goes towards this like toxic positivity that we see so much in social media and just like in society. And I mean, I don't really think someone should be grateful for the bad things that happen to them. I think, yeah, sometimes things happen and people find the best out of it, and sometimes things happen and people find the worst out of it. I think a lot of the times people try to find the happiness in everything because they're expected to, but not because that's really how they feel. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that the reason I don't like that saying is because I feel like it's so dismissive. If someone is
Mhm.
telling you something bad happened to them and they're like, "Ugh, everything happens for a reason," and you're just kind of like, okay then. It's so dismissive on both fronts. Like if you're confiding in someone to tell them something that like you've been feeling and then they just hit you with, oh, well, everything happens for a reason, then you just kind of are
Yeah.
left feeling like, okay, well then screw me then, And then
Yeah.
also on the other reverse side, it's like if something really great happens to you and someone's like, see, everything worked out, everything happens for a reason, then it like
Yes.
dismisses all of your hard work. And you're like, no, not everything happens for a reason. Like I worked really hard for that. I
Mhm.
sacrificed, I worked, I put in the work, and I had to make so many sacrifices in my life for someone to just tell you like, see, it all worked out, it's great. And that's why
Yeah.
I really don't like it when people say everything happens for a reason or God has a plan. And I'm like, no, I just find it so condescending and just so dismissive. And so I really really try to get away from people who use that terminology
Yeah.
or like not tell those people things.
That kind of reminds me of like when someone wants to complain about being married or someone wants to complain about having kids. They're like, "Oh, well, like you made that choice," or "Oh, you're the one that decided to live their life like that." Like, and then kind of making you feel like, "Oh, I can't even like complain or I can't even have anything bad to say about this because it's just a road that I decided to take." And I really, really, really hate when people do that. Or I really hate when people try to like single people try to compare their lives to married people. And I think like 99% of the time, people that are saying these things don't even understand what the other person is going through. It's like when people give us parenting advice that don't have kids. Like, if you don't have kids, I don't want your parenting advice
Yeah.
because you don't know what it's really like. Like, people that say, I would never give in to my kid's tantrum. But there you are sitting in the middle of a Target and your kid is throwing a tantrum. And what are you going to do? Like, let them keep
I mean,
doing
that's
that
the
or give
truth
in?
because it's like there's things about like, and it happens too with people who aren't married and they're like, "Oh, I would never let my husband treat me that way. Or I would never let my husband do that or get away with that." And it's like, you
Yeah.
don't know until you're put in that situation. And it's
Hmm.
like, there's so easy to say like this is the kind of parent I want to be or this is the kind of wife that I want to be, but when you really get into it and you have to make a decision that is like in the moment, honestly, it's like you have no idea how you're going to react.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like I say this to like people in my life who have had kids and who are like either like about to get married or about to have kids or are thinking about having kids
You
and
tell them not to do
people
it.
and most of the time I do. Oh my god, I have that reminded me of the funniest story. This girl in my class, I was so embarrassed. We had a break in class. Like we have 10-minute breaks where we like can go to the bathroom, we can eat. So this girl in my class, we went to the bathroom together and last semester she told us that her boyfriend was going to propose to her and that like she knew he was going to propose and that she was like really excited. And I haven't seen her since last semester. And over winter break, her boyfriend asked her to marry him. And I didn't know that. And we were standing in line for the bathroom and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like what advice would you, like, give to someone who's about to get married? And as a joke, I was like, "Oh, I would tell them not to do it." And 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 then she shows me her ring and she's like, "I just got engaged." And I was like, "Oh my god." And then my professor was standing right behind us and she just started laughing and she was like, "And you really just told her just not to get married?"
I
But
feel
I
like
mean,
that's the same with me though, with like people who want to have kids, they like want to ask me like, "Oh, how is it being a parent?" I'm like, "If you want to have kids, don't ask me because you
yeah.
don't want to hear my opinion."
But, like, people would hate to ask us things because we say the truth.
Yeah.
We say things that will make other people feel uncomfortable that aren't in this situation. Like, people that give us parenting advice who had kids, like, 30 years ago, it's not the same. And the same thing that I told the girl, I was like, "I didn't regret saying that because it's really hard." And I told her, like, being married is really hard, and I just had another friend who's considering having a baby, and I was like, my number one advice would be to take people's advice with a grain of salt. I was like, don't ever feel bad for deciding to be a different parent than the people around you because 99% of the time, those people don't know what they're talking about. And you have to decide the kind of mom that you want to be, the kind of wife that you want to be, and the kind of person that you want to be outside of what everyone else is saying. And this is why I have such a problem. I will die on this hill that people that were parents like 30, 40 years ago do not understand what it's like now. Like being a parent now is so different than ever. And not even just because of the cost of having kids, because that's like a whole nother thing. Kids are really expensive. But I feel like just kids now in general are so different, and finding childcare is so difficult now that it just keeps adding and adding and adding to the difficulty of having children. And I really, anytime that someone is gonna have kids or someone is pregnant or someone has a newborn, I tell them the straight truth. And I'm just like, it's hard. It will beat your butt in the trenches. You're not even gonna know what your name is. And yeah, maybe sometimes you'll come out the other side of that like, being grateful that you had them, and sometimes you won't, and both of them are very valid.
Yeah, there's someone in my life who recently, told me like, well, first of all, we went out to lunch and then I was complaining like I always do about my kids and about how they terrorize me and about how it's so hard and I'm like complaining, complaining, complaining. And she's like, "Oh, well, I wanted to let you know that I'm thinking about having kids." And I'm like, "I don't regret anything I just said. Same as you. I do not regret it. I do not take it back."
Yeah.
I'm like, and I told her, I was like, "Look, I am not the type of person, don't come to me to tell you how great parenting is because that's just not my experience." And I'm like, and
Mhm,
maybe there are moms out there or parents out there who really do see every single challenge as a joy, but that is not who I am. And I've always been extremely honest about who I am. I wasn't a person who ever really seeked the idea of having kids. Like it was more something that was like a culture, like it's just something that you do, right? Which is
mhm,
something we'll talk about too a little bit later. And so coming into this knowing that like it's gonna be hard and then also like we always do, I think about the kind of parent I wanted to be and seeing how that
mhm,
changed so much and how I had to just let go of so many things that I wanted as a mom, like, it's hard, and so I'm like, don't come to me, to tell you how beautiful motherhood is. Like, that's
mhm,
just not the advice that I'm gonna give you because for me, it's been hard. And there's parents out there who choose to lie because
mhm.
and I get it though because it's so shameful. Like because most of the time when I tell people like my experience and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're heartless." Like that is usually the response that I
Oh my
get. And
god.
it's like I'm not heartless. I'm just being honest. And even within my own home, like my husband and I, like he romanticizes like being a dad. And then I'm like, "Do you not remember 5 minutes ago where you wanted to kick the kids out of the house? Like that just happened. Did you forget?" And then he's like, "No, they're just kids." And then 5 minutes later, it's like they're at war again. And I'm like, "So you were saying like how reward this is?" So going back a little bit to marriage. So how old were you when you got married?
So, I was 23 when I got married, and my husband was my first serious boyfriend. He was, like, my first adult boyfriend. I had boyfriends before, but they're, like, the younger, like, kid
Yeah.
boyfriend. So, he was my actually my first serious relationship, and I remember he wanted to get married when we were together for, like, 2 months. Like, he immediately wanted to get married, and I obviously said no. I was like, "That's not happening," 'cause I came at it with the idea of, like, "I don't even know if I'm gonna end up with you, so no, I'm not gonna marry you." And, looking back now, getting married at 23, like, I had so much growing up to do. Like, how you said in your episode, like, we were just 2 kids growing up together. No, worst of all, we were 2 kids growing up together raising a
The
kid.
kid. Yeah.
So, by the time that we got married, I was in therapy for about a year and a half. So, I really wanted to work on myself, and I really took it upon myself to get to know myself better because I'm that kind of person that I don't like to be with myself. Like, I
Yeah.
like to have the TV on or talking to people. I didn't like to be with myself for a really long time, so I wanted to work on that, and I really worked on that. I was in therapy for a while, and before we got married, I was selfish. Like, I was a selfish 20-year-old, you know? I didn't care. I did anything I wanted whenever I wanted, and I was living my life, and until I got married, I didn't really realize how when you're married, like, you don't get to be selfish anymore. Or when you have kids, you don't get to be selfish anymore. And I had to really learn how to communicate and how to build a healthy relationship and consider the other person before I did something. And that was really hard at the beginning of our marriage. Like, I'm the youngest of 4 kids, so by the time I was old enough, like, I was on my own. I didn't have to ask anyone permission for anything. And it was really hard for me to get into the mindset of explaining to someone what I'm gonna do before I do it. And that's something that I still have so much trouble with because my husband will be like, "And, like, what are you doing today?" And I'm like, "I don't wanna tell you what I'm gonna do today." Or he'll be like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Oh, like, why do you need to know where I'm going?" So, I guess when I got married, I didn't fully understand what it meant to be married. Like, I thought it was just gonna be, like, each person living their lives living together, but that is so, so, so far from the truth.
And
Mhm.
then how did he propose to you?
He proposed to me on my graduation day. I had found the ring, like, the day before. He hid it
My God.
under his sink. I was like, he was so obvious. It was still in, like, the K jeweler bag under his sink, like, literally no effort in hiding it, but he proposed to me on my graduation day with a bouquet of, like, 100 roses, and it said, like, "Congratulations," and then it had a little butterfly, and when you pulled the butterfly, it said, "Will you marry me?" And then he proposed, and I remember that night that was on my graduation day in 2024, and that night, I remember I had been meaning to talk to him about what I expected out of a marriage and how I like, personally, how I see what a marriage means, and I kinda just told him, like, "I know that a marriage is forever as long as both people are happy." Made it very clear to him very early on that I'm gonna work on this marriage as much as I possibly can, but if one day I really feel like we have problems that are never gonna get better and that I am really unhappy, I have no shame in ending a marriage because I'm
Mhm.
unhappy. And I was
Yeah.
like, "And you should feel the exact same way. Like, if you're ever unhappy, I want you to tell me, and I want you to be honest, not just with me, but with yourself. Like, never think, like, just because we're married, I have to stick it out."
Yeah.
And I made that really clear to him early on, and I think that really set up the stage for the rest of our marriage.
Do you know if he asked for your hand in marriage?
Don't think he did. I don't know. We talked about in the other episode how my dad was like, "You
Right.
better marry her." I mean, I think it was implied.
It was implied that he asked for it.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, how long did the honeymoon stage last?
There was never a honeymoon stage. I Yeah, there never was because we got married and we had a 1-month-old when we got married, like almost 2 months. So, honestly, like, I and I was thinking about this when I was writing my notes for this episode. I don't think I ever touched on it in my episode or any previous episodes, but I was struggling really hard with postpartum rage. Like, that was really, really, really
What is
prevalent
that?
for me. Postpartum rage is when, like, after you have a baby, you experience a lot of anger, and not, like, towards the child, but, like, in general. Like, you get set off by any little thing. You have, like, angry outbursts, and you kinda just take it out on anyone,
Mhm.
and I was really experiencing that with my husband. Like, he was the person that I would take it out on, and I was experiencing really bad postpartum rage because I feel like my life just completely changed. Like, it was like night and day from the life that I lived before, and I was really struggling with that. I feel like we never really had a honeymoon stage because I was living deep in the postpartum rage. Like, that was really hard for me, and at that point, I wasn't in therapy anymore because I had my daughter, so I took a break from therapy. I remember my husband one day, like, he talked to me and he was like, "Honestly, like, I am really unhappy. I don't understand why you're always so mad at me." And I was like, "I don't know either." He's like, "You come home and I'm just immediately mad. Like, I just need an outlet and, like, you're my punching bag." And I felt so guilty after that, and he told me, like, "I think you should go back to therapy because I think you really need to work on your anger problems." So I ended up going back to therapy and I really worked through that because that was a really big hurdle we jumped in our marriage really early on. So like I'll explain this throughout the episode, but we had a very unconventional marriage at the beginning. Like, we kind of started in a deficit. Like, we started our marriage with so many problems already,
Yeah.
and looking back at it now, I think we got married not because particularly that we wanted to, but because we kinda wanted people to stop telling us, "Get married," and "When are you
Yeah.
getting married?" and, like, all the questions, but I don't think that we were in a place to get married at that time. Like, I don't think that I mentally even understood how important being married was gonna be, and that really messed with my head.
So, do you remember your first fight as a married couple?
Our first fight was about him working late.
Mm.
And I think I was so sensitive to him working late because we had a newborn, and it was in February. So we got married January 31st. Our first fight happened in, like, February, and that was when the sun would go down really soon. So I
Mm.
felt like I was just, like, sitting in darkness forever with this baby, and I was getting really depressed. Like, I was getting really bad seasonal depression, and I just felt like I was alone forever. And I remember telling him, like, I keep in mind, I was going through my postpartum rage during this time. And I remember just telling him, like, if you were just gonna work all day, then why did you even get married and have kids? Like, if you were never gonna be home, then why are we even here? Like, why did we even decide to have a life like this if you were just never gonna be here? And obviously, looking back at it now, like, he was hustling, making his business
Yeah.
work so that we could have food on the table. And, like, looking at it now, like, it wasn't it wasn't an appropriate thing to fight about because he was doing his best and I was doing my best. But in the moment, I really felt like this is never gonna change. Like, I'm just always gonna be waiting for him to come home. And that was super hard for me because to me, obviously, like, all respect out there to stay-at-home moms, but I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's where I felt like I was going, and I told him that, and I remember fighting and, like, I exploded on him, and, like, my husband has always been very, like, cold-headed, like, he's never quick to, like, raise his voice or anything, but his way of, like, fixing things is by, like, pausing it and walking away and thinking about it and coming back ready to talk. And at that point, I was like, "Where are you going? Like,
"No,
I'm
you walk away
talking to
from
you."
me."
I was like, "Don't you walk away from me, I'm talking to you." And he was like, "We're just gonna end up fighting. Let's not talk about this. Like, let's come back and talk about it." And we've had, like, a handful of fights that go that way that, like, we're just fighting back and forth, like, yelling at each other. But I think recently we both really worked on the way we fight because, like,
Mhm.
people that say they don't fight, it's not true. Like,
There's
there's no way
someone
that
in our life who she literally told me once, like, she's been married for 30 something years, and she's like, "I've never had a fight with my husband." I'm like, "You're
that's not
lying.
true.
You
That's not
lying."
true. It's the same thing when people say, "Oh, my kids never cry." Like, they're angels
They're
that
angels, they don't do
never cry.
anything.
Like, people that are married and say they don't fight, either you're faking it and lying, or you're not really working on your marriage. Because
Yeah.
a marriage does not grow unless there's fighting, because then you're just staying stagnant and sitting in problems instead of solving it. And that's something that I told my husband because he doesn't like to fight. Like, he thinks that every fight is gonna end in, like, we're getting divorced.
Yeah.
So I told him, I was like, "It's not about whether we fight or not, but it's how we have disagreements." Like, now what we do is we'll take 5 minutes to think about it before anyone says anything, because every time we fight, it's because something just immediately pops out of our mouth. So we just take 5 minutes, each person, like, gets their space, thinks about it, and then we come back and we talk about it, and we don't say anything from the other person's point of view. And this is really hard, like, it's
That's
so
so
hard. We try to only say things that are gonna make it better and not putting blame, and
Mhm.
that is really hard. Like, doing these things habitually is really, really, really hard, and I told him, "We just need to get used to it," because we both grew up in an atmosphere where it was like, "Okay, we need to find out who to blame because I'm not trying to get in trouble for something, so it's someone else's problem," and that's something that we've had to unlearn, and unfortunately, this first year of marriage, it has been a lot of fighting and a lot of getting to know each other, because you don't know someone until you marry them, and I will
Do you
die on
live
that
with
hill.
them?
Until you live with them. If you don't believe in marriage, until you live with someone, you don't
Yeah.
know them.
Do you, in your opinion, know anyone that you categorize as a happy couple?
No.
Me neither. No one.
No.
And I was
No
thinking
one.
about this when I was thinking about my notes for this episode, because I think that in my point of view, we grew up in a culture where the women were always so angry all the time.
Yeah.
Like, they only knew anger.
Mhm.
And I think it all stems from this perspective that the women aren't allowed to show weakness. So you have
Yeah.
to do it all. And
Mhm.
what happens? You burn out, and then you start lashing out on people, and you start being angry at your spouse for not helping you, and at your kids for being ungrateful because you do everything for them. But then as a woman, you you need help. Everyone needs help, but you're not allowed to ask for help because that's showing weakness, and you're not allowed to show
Yeah.
weakness. Or you get into a fight with someone and you would rather die and never talk to that person again than admit that you made a mistake or that you were wrong, right? It's like
Yeah.
all or nothing. Like, you can't admit that you made a mistake because that's showing weakness. You're not allowed to ask for help because that's showing weakness. So then we just grew up around all these women who were just so angry all the time at their spouses and at their
Yeah.
kids. And so it's like we just grew up in an environment of just anger. Just everyone's
Yeah.
angry. Everyone is just so angry. Nobody ever fixes any problems because all the men in our life are like, okay, my wife's angry. I just came home from a long day at work. I don't want to deal with this. So I'm just going to tell her what she wants to hear and just go to sleep and move on with my life. And so
Yeah.
no problems are ever getting fixed. And so it's like when I'm looking back at and obviously, I think that it's generational, right? It's not
Yeah.
just like us, it's not them, it's not the generation before them. It's just a full generation of women who come from women who were stay-at-home moms or working moms and stay-at-home moms. So it's like I think that I've been really trying to get away from this mentality, and with my husband at least, where it's like at the beginning of when we were having kids, it felt like if I wanted to work, I had to figure out a way to work and still be a mom and still be a wife. So it's like
Yeah.
if I wanted to work, it was going to be on my own time, but I still had to make sure that the kids are taken care of, that my house was taken care of. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, because it's like even though women work now, it's like you're still supposed to do it all. If you want to work, you still have to do everything else that's expected of a woman. And it's like,
Yeah.
so then I get super bothered when, I tell people my dynamic and they're like, oh my gosh, your husband helps you with night feedings. Your husband helps you with diaper changing. I'm like, it's their child. I'm not asking them to change the diaper of a child that isn't theirs. Like, that is their
Mhm.
responsibility. And so people are always like, they're never all like, wow, you're a working mom and you do this and you go to work. That's so amazing. It's never that. It's always like,
Yeah,
wow, your husband helps you take care of your own children. And it's like, what? And I just
yeah,
don't understand. And I feel like definitely when people ask me like about kids, and I'm like, honestly, I don't feel like the world has changed enough for it to be like the tipping scale between, I don't want to say like worth it, but like it's just the world hasn't changed enough for women. I
yeah,
feel like it's still very difficult.
yeah. I agree. I've had this conversation with my husband because my therapist recommended for me to, think about marriages that I see around us and think what I like about each marriage. And I was like, I can't choose one marriage around me that I would want to be like. And it's going to your point. Like, there's just so much expected of women. And also, there's this notion that, like, just because you're like, once you're married for life and you can never leave that person. Like, if they cheat on you, you still have to be married. If you're like a victim of domestic violence, you still have to be married. Like, if you are just unhappy, like, maybe you just don't love this person anymore, you have to keep being married. And I just hate how in the culture it's it's worse getting divorced than living in an unhappy marriage where you don't respect each other. Like, in my mind, I that just does not make sense. Like, how is it possible that being divorced is worse than being unhappy?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in motherhood. Like, people just think it's impossible to be a mother and be unhappy. Like, it's just it blows my mind how stigmatized being an unhappy mom is. Like, okay, yeah, I decided to have kids, but that doesn't mean it's rainbows every day. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that we don't get to complain about it. And it doesn't mean that our husbands don't have to pick up slack. Like, they had kids too. Like, they decided to have kids too. And I feel your point so hard about your husband because everyone in our family, like everyone around me will be like, oh my God, you have the best husband because he stays home with your kid while you go to school. I'm like, are you
Like, oh, thank you
serious?
so much for taking care of your own child.
I'm like, he also decided to have kids. Like, it wasn't just me making a kid by myself. Like, they decided to have them too. So why wouldn't they have the same level of responsibility? And I think it goes to something that we talked about, I think in our last episode together, that we carry like the invisible mental load. Not saying all men, but I feel like 90% of the time, the women are the ones that are like, okay, we're running out of diapers. They have a doctor's appointment. We have to go buy food. These are like, they like these snacks, not those snacks. This is what they like to eat. We're the ones that carry all of that mental load. And then on top of that, carrying the mental load of our house, like making sure our house is in order, our bills are paid, our house is clean. And then on top of that, if you're a working mom, if you study, like it's all of we wear all of these hats and have all of these roles, but in the end, we're the ones that are the least appreciated. And
Yeah.
it's like it's not saying all women or all men, but I feel like in general, the world has not evolved enough to really understand that women aren't born just to be homemakers and child bearers. We're made for so much more than that. And it goes also towards worth. Like, just because a woman decides not to have kids, it doesn't mean that she's worthless. And just because a woman decides to have kids doesn't mean that she automatically deserves an award because she had children. And I think the world is just not evolved enough for.
Yeah. I just don't think so. I'm like, if I'm thinking back on my life, I don't think I know any happy women.
No.
I don't think that that exists in my life. Like anyone who I can say, like, wow, that is a really happy woman who just is happy and just doing their thing. Like, I don't think that that is something that I ever knew in my life, and not a happy married woman and not a happy mother. That is just
Yeah.
not something that I have ever known in my life. And I think that what makes me so angry about parents who had kids like 30, 40 years ago is when like I had like 5 kids and I did it. And I'm like, yeah, all 5 are in therapy. Like
Yeah.
all of them are not okay in the head. I'm like, all of them have traumas. Like they are barely functioning humans. I'm like, there is a difference between having kids and being a parent. There is a
Yeah.
huge
Oh,
difference
yeah.
between like just having all these kids and then having the older kids raise the younger kids. And just because you birth them doesn't mean that they're good people. It doesn't mean that they're functional people. It doesn't mean that they're not carrying all these traumas with them. I'm like, what is the point of having 5 kids if you're not going to dedicate, like, what kind of future are you building for these 5 kids though? And that's why kind of like when I get bullied into having another kid, and I'm like, I know in my heart that I cannot be a mother to a third child. Like that is just not something that I have in me. I have my 2 children and it's hard enough as it is. I'm
Mhm.
like, and I have to be really honest with myself and be like, you know what? And I think that kind of to what we talked about, like there's been like a little bit of a shift in the reason why people have kids, because before
Yeah.
like people had kids because they needed them for labor, and now like I think people still have that mentality. So like when their kids grow up and they don't have money to go to college or they don't have money to have any sort of future, and then they don't do anything with their life, and you're like, well, you didn't dedicate any time to them in their
Yeah.
youth. You didn't tell them that they could do it. You didn't help them apply for college or teach them how to work or teach them to want something more out of life. You just had them and expected somebody else to take the responsibility of raising them into good people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really, really, really respect people when they say, like, I'm not having kids because I wouldn't be a good parent. I respect that so hard because people that know that they cannot emotionally, mentally, and financially be there for a child, you shouldn't be having them. And people that are in tune with themselves and really know, like, it's not within my capacity to have children. I really respect that, and I respect the honesty, and I d I highly dislike when people say, "Well, kids are just, like, the most blessings and the most amazing things that you can ever have in your life," and I'm like, "Yeah, I really love my kid. My kid is amazing, and I love her, and I wouldn't change anything, and I don't regret having her, and I love having her in my life, but are there things that I can't do because I had a kid? Yeah, there are, and I'm honest about that, and I think a lot of the times people get so wrapped in this idea of, "I'm gonna have a kid so I can give them the life that I never had." And it's like, "Okay, you want that? You really want that? How are you gonna do that if you haven't worked through your own issues and figured out who you really are and teach your kid how they can be a better person?" If you haven't worked on yourself and shown yourself how you can be a better person. And I think that's just something that bothers me. Like people who haven't worked on themselves and still decide to actively have kids and just pass down the traumas and pass down the traumas. And then it just keeps going and going because then that kid is going to have kids and then it's just going to keep going. I think the whole idea of having kids to make your life feel fulfilled is a lie,
It
personally.
is a lie. And I think that the reason is something that I really learned in therapy is that you can say all these things all day long, but the reality is that when you have a certain lived habit and a way that you've lived your life for your entire life, you can't just choose the day of tomorrow, I'm not going to do this anymore, because those are
Mhm.
habits. Those are things that come out when you least expect them. And I catch myself with my kids, like things where I'm like, that my mom did to us. And I'm like, I'm never going to do that to my kids. And then when I least expect it, I am doing the exact same thing, and I catch myself and I'm like, "Oh, whoa." And those are the moments where I think it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be to break those cycles and to stop doing those things, because even though I've worked so much on myself and I can recognize in the moments, it's still like a moment of like, "Oh, but I still did it." And so like for me it's yelling at my kids because they frustrate the hell out of me, and sometimes I lose it on them and I just yell at them, and then I feel so bad, and so I have to get to their level and I have to apologize and say like, "Oh, I'm sorry for yelling at you, that wasn't okay." But it's like if you don't do the work to actually identify those things,
Mhm.
you're just going
Yeah.
to keep repeating cycles.
Yeah. I mean, I think even what you just explained about actually apologizing to your child, like, that in and of itself is breaking a whole cycle. 'Cause
Well, that's what I'm telling you, because in our life, like, if you apologize, you're showing weakness, and you're
yeah.
gonna get eaten in the wilds if you show weakness.
But getting back to this topic of marriage, I have a question for you. It's a two-part question.
Okay.
What what surprised you the most about being married? And was marriage what you thought it was gonna be?
No, marriage was not at all what I thought it was gonna be. Like I mentioned in my episode, I thought that marriage led to happiness. So I thought, I get married and then I'm just gonna be the happiest person ever. And I think our first fight was the day of our wedding before we even got married.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
that day, like I was already pissed off. Like that day of our wedding, I was already we had already had our first fight, because my husband is someone who lives in his own little world.
Mhm.
My husband. He just lives in his own world. He just nothing about him is malicious, but he just lives in his own world. And I think me coming into this marriage thinking that he was just gonna be there 100% for me, and his sole purpose was to just be like by my side and fixing my life for
Mhm.
me, so that I never had to be alone again, or I never had to feel alone again. So that's already like, I'm already going into this marriage like setting us up for failure.
Yeah.
And then I remember that day of the wedding, I'm getting ready for the wedding, I'm getting my makeup done and all this stuff. And he hadn't texted me all day. Like he didn't even say like good morning. He didn't say like I'm so excited to get married. Like I'll see you later. Nothing. So I'm sitting here thinking like he's not gonna show up. Like,
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
what is happening? And that day that I went, into the church, like I was already annoyed. I'm already annoyed because you didn't show me any love. You didn't show me like any type of, oh, I'm so excited for this or anything like that. And, talking about it later, it's like he wasn't even thinking about that. Like he was like, I was trying to go buy socks at Ross. Like I had things to do. Like it wasn't malicious, but I think in my brain it was like, and we'll not talk about this a little bit later, but like in my brain, everything he ever did to me was, oh, you're trying to hurt me. It's malicious. You're
Yes.
trying to hurt me. You're intentionally trying to ruin my life. All you want is to see me like sad, right? Like you're
Mhm.
just trying to anger me. That's your number one job. And so that day, it's like I never saw it from this perspective of like, oh, he's nervous. He has things to do. Like he's also doing things that he needs to do to get ready for the wedding. Like I saw it as like, why didn't you take a minute to think about me?
Yeah.
And so going into this marriage, like thinking that it was going to be just us living. Well, I thought that marriage was going to be us just living together, like going wherever we wanted, doing whatever we wanted all the time, and not having to answer to anyone, and just living this like crazy free life. That's what I thought marriage was going to be. But that's not the reality, because people have jobs, you have budgets. Like we didn't have any money. Like we moved into a house, and so we had all these bills to pay. We were making practically no money. At the time he was working like 12, 14-hour days. He was commuting. I was in school. Like it was not like we barely ever saw each other, like at all. And then when we would come together, all we would do was fight because we were never together. And we went from, so going back a little bit, when we got married, we did everything by the book. Like we got married to the civil ceremony. I
Mhm.
remember it was June 1st. We had two weddings. So we had that wedding. And then almost 2 months later, we had our church wedding, and we didn't live together. We each lived in our own separate houses. After the wedding, after our first wedding, we each went to home to our own
Oh
house.
my
Like
gosh.
we didn't at all, like we didn't live together ever. We never spent a night together. We were just kids, and I was so scared of our parents. I didn't
Mhm.
want to I was the first one to get married. So I thought like, okay, this is the way you do it. You don't move in together until you get married through the church. And so we didn't. Like I remember that day
That's
after our
insane.
wedding, I went home with my parents and he went home with his parents, and
That is
we
wild.
we didn't live together until, and I remember the day of our wedding, we were flying out the next day for our honeymoon. And so the day of our wedding, we were flying out of San Francisco. So we just went back to my mom's house and we spent the night there. And then we got like a 5 a.m. flight the next day. And
That was your wedding night?
that was our wedding night. Our wedding night, we went back to our parents' house, full house because a bunch of people had flown in from Mexico
Oh
and from across
my
the
god.
country. And so we went home and then like literally a couple hours later, we left to the airport. And so the first actual night we spent together was the first day of our honeymoon. So we did everything like by the book, you
That's
know,
insanity.
legit by the book. And so when we went on our honeymoon, it was the first time we had ever spent any like really long period of time together because we never like went on not even like a weekend trip. And so we were in Cancun, we stayed there for about a week and then we came back and we moved into the house that we were renting and we came back and we had nowhere to live because the house had nothing inside. Like we had to come back from our honeymoon and still move all of our stuff into where we were renting. So it was
So
like
where did you
a
guys
disaster.
sleep? Did you
I
each sleep
don't
at your house?
remember that. But I know for sure we didn't spend any night at either. Like the only night we ever spent together, I think, was the night of our wedding. And then after that, I think that the day we flew back, we just had to move all of our stuff into our new house. So it
That's
was like we came back,
insane.
we had to move all the stuff in there, and then we started living together. And I think the hardest part for me was that the mentality that even though I'm married, I was still living under my parents' rules. Like I was still
Yeah.
doing everything that they told me to do. I was still holding on to all the expectations they had of me, like, and that caused so many problems in my marriage because I couldn't say no. I couldn't,
Mm.
like, cut the cord. I couldn't cut the cord
Yeah.
between me and my family because I lived in this dynamic where everything I did, I had to consult with my family, and I think worst of all, like, my parents would put expectations on me, and then I would put those expectations on him. And so I was forcing him
Mm.
to live this life where my parents are telling us what to do all the time, and he's just not the type of person to take to take directions from
Yeah.
anyone. That's just not who he is. And so he worked for my dad, and it was so difficult. It was so difficult because sometimes he would have problems at work or stuff like that, and then it would automatically come to me like this family issue, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not the boss of him. Like, it had to come to the
Yeah.
point where it's like he's his own person and I can't control him. But that took a really long time. And I think that when I look back on our marriage, like, I don't think that I started to actually stand up for my family, like my family being my husband and my kids, until I had my first son. Like, that was the first time that I ever was like, I'm going to make the decisions. In my house, we make the decisions. In your house, you make your decisions. And that's
And
something that's really hard.
I think that went from like 0 to 100. No?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I remember when you first had your son and you were kind of putting up the boundaries of like, my kid's not having screen time. I don't want any sugar. You putting up those rules, like obviously as a parent would do. And I think it was, from my point of view, very badly received from our family. How
Yeah.
did you feel about that?
It was very badly received. I mean, I was going through so much and I had so much postpartum anxiety, like
Mm.
horribly. Like I had never suffered from anxiety until I had my son, and so that was a very new feeling for me. So not really being I mean, I always struggled with depression, but it was something different. It wasn't that,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how to identify it. And so people would come over and I just wanted to scream at them like, "Don't touch my child." Like, I just wanted to, like, lose it, or people would come to my house unannounced and I'm, like,
Mm.
losing my mind because I'm like, "What are you doing here?" Like, it was during COVID. Like, it was just so bad that I had to set those boundaries, and the difficult part wasn't setting boundaries with my family. It was setting boundaries with everybody else because, with my family, like, it's my family. If they're getting mad at me, then they're my family, right? They're only gonna be mad for so long. But when
Yeah.
it's other people in my life, it's like you really feel that pressure, and that pressure of, because I was the first person to have kids on both sides of our family. And
Yeah.
so it was like the first person who's really parenting in this new way, and people didn't like it. Like, they called me, like, overbearing. They're like, "You're doing too much," like, especially during the naps. Like, people just don't understand, and they're like, "Why are you doing that?" They
Yeah.
obviously, and it what all revolves around, like, basically just let them do whatever they want. And I'm like, "That's not
Yeah.
how I'm gonna raise my kids." Like, sleep training, like, not giving them sugar or juice, or or just going back, like, feeding them actual food for their age. Just even that was something. Everything I did was wrong. Every
Yeah.
single thing I did was criticized. Everything I did was wrong. Everyone had an opinion about every single little thing that I did. Back to breastfeeding, because I didn't wanna breastfeed, and that
Mhm.
was not taken, very well. Wanting to have them sleep in their own room. I was a horrible mom who didn't care about my kids because I wanted to sleep train them. Okay, they have to have a nap schedule. Oh no, you're forcing them to do something that's unnatural. It's like, back to your point, why does it bother you? Why does it
Yeah.
bother you that, and then that's kind of where I finally had to set my foot down, and I had to be like, I am the one who has to live with these little tiny humans, so I will raise them the way that I see fit. And I think another really big problem that arised was when you and your husband have different parenting styles. And you're like, "Okay, well, I'm
Yep.
with them for most of the, I'm the one who has to put up with them the majority of the time, so I feel like I should, it should default to my opinion," which obviously doesn't go over well, but it's it's not just even the outside world. It's even
In
just
the
in my own
home.
home, the
Yeah.
criticism. Like, especially when I wanted to sleep train my child, because I had gotten the hot tip from one of my friends that was like, "You know what? It's so much better if they sleep in their own room. They learn to sleep by themselves and they sleep all night. It's great." So I was like, "Yes, I wanna do that."
Praise that lady.
I
Praise
know,
that
and I
lady.
always tell her, I'm like, "I am so grateful to you for," and it's so funny, right? Because it's generational, and I have a question for you in a moment, so don't let me forget. But she was telling me that she had her kids 20 something years ago. She was telling me that when she had her first daughter, her mom was like, "Oh no, like, have them sleep in the bed with you," right? Traditionally what our
Yeah.
culture accepts. And so she did. And she was like, "It was so horrible. Like, she didn't want to sleep anywhere else except for with us. And it was so hard to wean her off of that." So she told me that when she had her second daughter, she was like, "No," she's someone who's very educated. So she took it upon herself to research and to kind of learn a little bit more about other options. And so she, with her second daughter, she sleep trained her. So she slept in her own room, and she was like, "It was amazing. Like, we were able to get sleep. She got used to it really quickly. It was super great." So she gave me that hot tip, and she was like, "You should do that." And I took it, at face value, and I did my research, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do that." And it worked really well for me. But I remember my husband being so against it. He was like, "I don't want you to
Yeah.
do that. Like, you're torturing him. Like, he's like so little and he's gonna feel so alone." And I'm like, "Well, I don't care." So he told me, and I tell him all the time, he was like, "If you," because we had to put him in a separate room. So he's like, "If you do that, I'm not gonna help you. I'm not gonna help you with night feedings. I'm not gonna help you take care of him at night if he cries. Like, I'm not gonna get up to go help you with." And I'm like, "I don't care. I don't care if you help me or not. I'm gonna do this because I need sleep. Like, I cannot function like this. Like, this is
Yeah.
so hard." And he was like, "Okay, fine." So I did it. Within 3 weeks, he was completely sleep trained. I remember he went to Mexico. He always goes to Mexico in January. And so when he was in Mexico, I sleep trained him, and within the week, he was sleeping through the night. Within 3 weeks, he was not waking up once. And that was when he was 4 months old. And so when my husband
Mhm.
came back, he was already sleep trained. And I'm like, "You're welcome." And so now when we had our second child, he's like, "Oh god, when can we kick him out of the room? Like, I am ready for this."
My gosh, I had the same problem with my husband. I don't think we've ever discussed it, but you have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I have a 1-year-old. So, like, between us, we had 3 kids in 4 years.
Yeah.
And literally when I had my daughter, I was like, "Copy and paste whatever you did. Like, copy and paste your parenting style. That's what I'm doing." And so for me, it wasn't really a question. Like, I didn't really have to do research because I just did exactly what you did. And I remember when it came time to sleep train my daughter, my husband was very against it. He was like, "This is torture. How are you just gonna let her cry? This is like inhumane treatment." And he was like so against it, whatever. I did it anyway. And 2 weeks later, she was sleeping through the night. Literally, she created her own schedule and I just went with it. Like, people think that we're making them sleep when we want them to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just following whatever her natural schedule is and I'm putting her to sleep. And the other day, he was like, our daughter randomly cried in the nighttime, which is super random for like, she never does that. And she like randomly cried. And he's like, she'll go to sleep. Like, just leave her alone. She'll be fine. Like, she'll be okay. And I was like, weren't
That's
you the one that
inhumane.
said, I was like, weren't you the one that said that was inhumane treatment? And he's like, well, that was the best thing we've ever done. And I was like,
We
me, I did that. I did the
Yeah.
sleep training. And it's the same with people that have their opinions that are outside of our home. Like, you're not living in it, so don't have an opinion about it. And this is something that I tell everyone, like every single person in my life who has had a child, having a child, considering having a child, like other people's opinions don't mean anything. Like, literally take people's opinion with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, every child is different, every parent is different, everyone is different. And I feel like in our culture, that is just not a thing. Like, if I did it one way and it worked, that means everyone else has to do it the exact same way. And this is something that I told my husband, like, I wouldn't have been able to be as firm in my parenting if you weren't firm in your parenting. Because I obviously got to a point where I would literally just shut it down. Like, if someone had an opinion about it, I'd be like, "Why are you bothered by it? Like, it's my
Yeah.
child, and I'm gonna decide to raise them however I see fit." And it's so funny because now if someone gives my daughter, like, a little taste of cake or something, like, she's 1 in a couple months, so now I give her, like, little tastes of cake. Is the We were at a party the other day, and someone gave my daughter, like, a little piece of cake, and my mom was like, "Oh, she doesn't have sugar. She doesn't eat cake." And I'm like, "Who would have seen her 2 years
Yeah.
ago saying something like that? 2 years ago, she gave your son a cookie when he was, like, 2 months old."
That was a feat. I
Cookie gate.
remember, like, because, well, okay, say this goes to, like, a whole different this is the whole web. This is a whole web, but, like, I've always had nannies because one of my very firm boundaries was I don't want the grandparents to be the childcare because I feel like the grandparents should be the grandparents and the childcare should be the childcare because have found that when it's family or friends, they feel like they don't have to take your rules seriously because they're doing
Yeah.
you a favor. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Here in my house, it's my rules. I'm like, okay, okay. If we go to grandma's house and my mom slips them a cookie, I'm not going to say anything. I'll be annoyed internally, but I'm not going to say anything. But in my house, we live under my rules. And if I go to my mom's house and I set a firm boundary with her about something and she doesn't want to follow it, then I just won't go to her house anymore. And that is something that I really had to be super firm about. And so when my son was like 2 months old, my mom came over and gave him a cookie. And the nanny texted me and was like, your mom just gave him a cookie. And I lost it. And I was so angry. And then I texted my mom very diplomatically and I was just like, "Hey mom, like I would appreciate it if you respect my boundary of not giving my 2-month-old sugar." And then she was like, "I didn't." And then she was mad at the nanny for ratting on her, but
I call
then,
this
she texted you like
Yeah.
all freaking out that I wasn't going to let her see the kids anymore, but it's like it's not about like punishing her for that. It's just
Mhm.
about setting the boundary of being like, I'm the mom. And I think that that's something that's very lost in our culture because I feel like people think that they're community kids where we all get an opinion and
Yeah.
we all get to treat them however we want. And it's like, I'm the mom. And the thing is, like, people, when I go to parties and I don't let my kids have juice, that's something that I do not let them have. Like, you can
Yeah.
eat cake, but I'm not going to let you have liquid calories. That's something that I'm very against. And so we'll go out and people are like, that's so mean that you don't let them. They're just kids and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, when we get home and he's puking his guts out because he had too much sugar, are you gonna come over and help me clean it up? Or are you gonna help me at night when he has a stomach ache and he's waking up all night? Are you gonna come and help me take care of him? No? Okay, then thank you. And that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
I think people's automatic opinion is that we're just being like we're hard and that we're just sucking the fun out of life and that we don't wanna let them be kids or live, and it's like, no, we want them to just be healthy, and we just want them
Yeah.
to be healthy humans, and if you leave it up to kids, like, yeah, they're gonna watch TV 24 hours a day and eat candy and drink juice and do all those things, but it's like, that's our job as parents to set those limits for them so that they can grow up with healthy boundaries, and I don't think that grandparents or people who don't have to live with them 24/7 really get to have an opinion about that.
Yeah. I think my point of view on this was really solidified after talking to Malachi. I really saw like if we stick to our guns and like we're really structured with the kids and we're focusing on like a healthy diet and exercise and teaching them what physical activity looks like, putting them in sports, like doing all of these things will pay off in the long run. Like, I really do think that Malachi's episode, like, touched a part of me that will never change because hearing how his parents did something completely different than what they grew up with, and Malachi now being old enough to really see and appreciate everything that they did for him, like, that really changed a part of me. And that really showed me this is worth it. Like everything that we're doing, every single argument or fight we get into people about how we decide to raise our kids and educate our kids and prioritize their health over them wanting something that their body doesn't really need. Every time we get into a fight with someone about that, like it's worth it. Like I will die on this hill that prioritizing a child's mental and physical health is 100% more important than being on everyone's good side or being the yes man to what everyone else has to say. And this is something that I've told my husband, like, if it gets to a point where people are just saying their opinions and opinions and opinions and opinions and it's getting to my mental health, then I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. Like I'm just going to completely remove myself from gatherings and being around people that don't share the same way of thinking as me. Like and it's something that I hope it doesn't get to this point, but I am ready to, cut cords and just completely remove people from my life because I think within us as sisters, like, we're all so different, but between us, like, we all respect the other person's way of living their life. And we
Yeah.
respect our sisters respect our way of raising our kids, and they'll advocate for us and be like, "No, that kid needs a nap," or "That kid has had too much sugar." And it's those people that we should be having in our lives, like, not people that will go against us and try to and I already know that when the kids are older, like, they're gonna wanna get into their head and say, like, "Oh, well, it's because your mom has always been so hard on you and has always been, like, such a dictator with you," and, like, I can already see it, like, down the line, and it's just something that I will die on a hill. Take people's opinions with a grain of salt because they don't matter, like, they don't matter, and being the yes man and being on everyone's good side doesn't matter.
But I mean, you can't though. Like, you will never make people happy. There will
Never.
always find something to criticize you with. And that's the thing. It's like they think that we're being, these being so mean to our kids for setting these limits for them. But at the end of the day, that's what parenting is, standing up for your kids and being like, you know what?
Yep.
It is so uncomfortable to stand up to someone and be like, no, and say no. And especially when it's your parent or especially when it's someone in your family and it's so hard to say, no, that's not how I'm going to choose to parent my child. And it's so uncomfortable to sit in that criticism because people they don't care. Like, they will say things to you that are so inappropriate. They'll try to
Yeah.
change your mind. They'll try to make you feel bad about your decisions. And so those are the moments where you have to be really firm and you have to be like, I am doing what's best for my child because this is what works for us. And you are someone that I see once every couple of weeks. You have no idea about my life. You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know my life.
Mhm.
You don't know how I want to raise my kids. So I don't need your opinion. And I think with me, it's gotten to the point people just don't say anything to me anymore because I
Yeah.
have no chill. Just be like, well, this is just the way that I am choosing to raise my child. And I don't think that that is a community decision. That is a decision that my husband and I make at home. And my husband and I have extremely different parenting styles. And I think that kind of going back to the marriage part of me, like I've been married for almost 12 years, which is insane to think
Insane.
about. But, when we first got married, like it was all just fighting and work. We would just work all day and then come home and fight all day. And something that really resonated with me when we were talking is about, wanting your kids to come home to a happy home. But I think that
Mhm.
it's not just about the relationship you have with your kids. It's about the relationship you have with your spouse because
Yep.
like, if you like, I want my spouse to come home to a happy home, like, I don't want my spouse to be like, "Oh, lordy, like, I do not wanna go through that door because I don't know what I'm gonna find," I think it's really easy to think that, like, oh, like, you fight with your husband or, in silence, right? And your kids don't notice, but kids do notice, like, they
They
do notice
notice.
when things are hostile between you and your spouse, and our kids right now are little, but they're feeding on all the energy. They're feeding on everything, listening to everything that's going on. And, I having a happy home is so much more than just what you provide for your kids. It's about having a whole happy home where you come home and if you are going to have conflicts, all relationships have conflicts, but it's like, how do you fix those conflicts? And having to like, for me, like you said, like, it's so hard for me. Like, when I'm upset with my husband, like my first reaction is just to be angry. And I
Yeah.
think so my cycle is to stew in silence and just stonewall him and not talk to him and act like he doesn't exist and ignore him until he figures out what he did to make me angry. That is like what I do, which is so like passive aggressive and just so unhealthy. And I think that like in therapy, my therapist really challenged me to not let it get to that. And so when I'm feeling like upset about something, now we kind of find an appropriate time, like when my kids are asleep or when they're taking their nap or something, and having to just be like, hey, what you did hurt me or upset me in this way, and being honest about that, like facing him and being like, "Hey, what you did hurt me, and I would appreciate it if you didn't do that," right? And that is so difficult. Like, it sounds easy,
Yeah.
but it's so hard to put yourself in that vulnerable position. And my husband has always been very receptive, and, like, he's definitely a person who doesn't like conflict, so he's definitely a person who, like, if there's a problem, like, he'll work on it. We'll work on it together, and I know that, and even then, I can't bring myself to tell him,
Yeah.
like, "Hey," it always defaults to him having to seek me out to figure out why I'm angry, and then not just, like, seeking me out, but trying to break me to actually admit why I'm angry, it's like
Yeah.
it's a whole thing, and so it's really difficult. So I would say that I've been married for 11 years. The first 10 were the worst, and I'm
Mm.
hoping that the ones coming are better, but it's it's like we never got to know each other, and I think that's
Yeah.
something for me is that I'm so thankful for this podcast because we never got to know each other, and so this podcast has really, like, opened up the gates for us to have actual conversations because we're just some people who like we had so many current problems that we didn't have time to deal with past problems. We're just trying to deal with
Yeah.
our current problems at hand. And so now when he's like, oh, like, what did you guys talk about on the podcast? And then it
Mhm.
kind of gives me like the opportunity to tell him like, oh, about this, and it kind of gives me the opportunity to talk to him about all these past things that happened before I even met him that have
Yeah.
never really come up in conversation. And I think that for us, it was like we never gave the past value, but it does give a lot of value because it determines your cycles. It determines why you are who you are, why you deal with conflict the way you deal with conflict. And something that I told him was that I was like, I feel like with you, like you always try to deflect all of our issues and just try to ignore them instead of trying to fix them. And he's like, yeah, because I mean, honestly, I just don't want to like, I don't want it to escalate into a fight. So I'd rather just not. And I'm like, yeah, but then we're not fixing any of our problems. We're just pushing them to the side. And
Yeah.
then eventually they come back because in the and the way that we saw, like, women around us is that, like, you act like everything's okay until you get into another fight, and then you bring out all the dirty laundry of all the
Yeah.
past fights that you had that you thought you fixed, but actually you were just saving them for the future.
I feel like a big part of our marriage was trying to figure out how to have healthy conflict. And that was really hard, and it still is so hard, and I think it all stems from the fact that having a baby and getting married wasn't really our choice, and it was really hard for us to adapt to a high stress situation, and I think a lot of the time we we try to put the problem on the other person instead of
Yeah.
actually seeing the problem for what it is and actually seeing like this is the problem and it's you and me against the problem instead of, oh well, it's me against you and you against me and we're gonna see who wins. And that was a really really big problem in our marriage, and it got to the point where I told my husband, like, "If this isn't gonna get better, then I would rather just call it here and have at least a little bit of a relationship for our daughter, because if you and I aren't gonna work, then you and I won't work, but I'm not gonna make our daughter a victim of our unhealthy marriage." And that was when he kind of realized, like, I need to get my own help and I need to, like, work on myself, and it's something that is really hard for him because these are things that he never thinks about his past, and he never brings up his past, and he's, like, the same way like you said with your husband, like, the past is in the past and it doesn't matter now, but it does, like, it is the
Yeah.
reason you are who you are, like, your attachment style, your communication style, your love language, like, all of that means something in a marriage, and it's something that I tell people, like, someone in my life, my husband's life, just recently got married, and I told this person, like, "Do not go into marriage lightly." Like, there is absolutely no reason in this world why you should get married to someone unless you feel ready and you in your relationship feel ready. Like, live together,
Yeah.
date, there's so many other options than getting married. Like, that is such a commitment, and don't do it lightly because marriage is hard. Like, it's hard even when you know someone for years. It's hard even when you have kids together and you've lived a life together. It's hard, and it is a lifetime of work, and I always tell this to people that are gonna get married and call me a Debbie Downer, but it's the truth, like, marriage is
But I
so
mean, it's the
hard.
truth, and it's like, to your point, like, you marry someone, right? I got married when I was 20 years old. My husband is not the person that I married. He's a
Exactly.
completely different person now. Like, we have been through so much and we have changed so much. And, for us, like, at our very core, we have so much love for each other. And I think that throughout all of our evolutions, like, he's the person who has really kept us together because honestly, if it was up to my self-destructive behaviors, like, we probably wouldn't be together anymore, but he is someone who has always been so sure of the relationship that he's the one who's kept us together, and all the times that I wanted to call it quits because I just couldn't see past all of our problems, and I didn't know
Yeah.
how we were ever gonna crawl ourselves out of them, and something that, like, I'm so thankful for him because, like, kind of how you talked about, like, your husband, like, you saw him for something that he didn't even see himself, and I feel like my husband saw me for so much more than I was giving him because I'm like,
Mhm.
now looking back, I'm like, how did he and why did he put up with me? Like, it wasn't his
Yeah.
responsibility to help me just because I had mental health problems that I couldn't crawl myself out of. Like, I put us in such bad positions and bad situations, and he always saw me for for so much more, And now that I look back, I'm like, I don't understand why he stayed with me. Like, I don't understand why he pushed through, like, all of the bad stuff. And it wasn't 1 or 2 years, like, it was almost a decade of just problems all the time, and I wish I could be in his brain to understand, like, why he pushed past it and why he stayed, but I'm so thankful for it now because now we have a beautiful life. Like, now that we have, like, kind of stopped and silenced the outside noise of what other people expect out of us, out of parenting and marriage, like, now we can live our life, like, on our terms because I think just for a long time, it was just so much pressure of like, okay, we have to live our life according to tradition or according to our culture or according to what people understand. And when we got married, we were someone. And then fast forward to when we both started being professionals and working a professional jobs, we were a completely different people. And then we had kids and we both completely changed. Like we were now I wasn't just dealing with my husband, I was dealing with a dad. I was dealing with someone who didn't just have all the time in the world for me and my problems. Like I remember he would tell me like, I would come home, you're crying, the baby's crying. I didn't know what to do. Like I'm going crazy, like nothing, like I couldn't do anything. Like I would come home from a long day at work and have to deal with the situation of me being postpartum anxiety, the newborn baby, us feeling like we weren't gonna be able to keep him alive because we had no idea what we were doing. And then me going back to work, being a working mom, having to pay for a nanny, and then our dynamic where one of our biggest issues was like he would come home from work and I would come home from work and I'm like, I'm tired. He's tired. Like, the nanny has left. So now like we have to have a battle between who's going to take care of the child when we're both extremely tired from working all day. And then now being parents of toddlers where we have a little bit more time to ourselves and we have a little bit more time and freedom. Now he's a completely different person than all the other people that you know, I'm like, now I don't even recognize him. Like now he's into all of these hobbies and he has all these friends and he's like this person that I'm like, okay, now I don't even know who you are
Now
anymore.
he's
And
a
now
social butterfly.
we have to figure out how to live with each other and how
Yeah.
to like get like now we're adults, right? Now I actually feel like we're adults. Like we're adults, we're working, we have toddler kids, like we have a little bit more time for ourselves. Like he's kind of in a position in his business where he doesn't have to dedicate that much time to it, so he has a lot of free time. So it's like now we have cycled through like 10 different personalities and like now we're completely different people than the people that we were when we met. And so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you get married, right? And then you marry someone who completely changes and then you're like, okay, like what am I supposed to do with this now?
I notice every time you talk about your kids, you talk about only when you had your first kid. And this goes to something that I've been seeing a lot about on social media. And it's something that I've been dying to ask you, but every time we do a podcast episode, I forget to ask you. Is it harder to go from no kids to one kid or from one kid to two kids?
Oh gosh, I hope I don't get canceled for this, but having two kids is like living in a nightmare. It is so hard. Like I want to cry just thinking about it. Like having two kids is the hardest thing I probably will ever go through in my life. Like it is so hard because when you have one kid, it's like so much happiness and love. It's this new thing in your life, and everyone's willing to help you, and everyone's there for you, and everybody just wants to take in this kid, right? But then you have two kids, and it's like old news. Like, oh, okay, like she already had one, so like whatever, right? People don't come and visit you, they don't offer to help anymore. They just kind of are like, that's old news, right? And it's like my kids are 2 years apart, and I've told you, it feels like I have twins because they both need so much of me, and I remember back to the time where I just had one kid, and I'm like, I was living the dream. That was the dream. That was the dream because, when your one kid goes to sleep, you have all the time in the world for yourself, and you have the time for
Mhm.
yourself to work and to do all this, but now you're dealing with 2 schedules, you're dealing with 2 tantrums, and then to the fact that my kids are completely different people. They
Yeah.
have polar opposite personalities. And so I have to be like 2 different moms to these 2 different kids. And it's so hard. It's so hard. So like that's why I tell people really think about it. And that's something a hill that I'll die on is have the amount of kids that you want to have for you. Not so your child has a sibling, not so your child, has someone to grow up with, not so you have someone to take care of you when you're old. Have the amount of kids that you want to have in this moment. Don't think about the future. Think about this moment because it is so difficult. And although I'm so happy that I was able to give my son a sibling because I think that everyone, you know, should have that. But if you as a parent feel like you cannot responsibly give your child a sibling, you shouldn't do it because it's not worth it. Because you think that you're doing them a benefit when actually you're doing them a disservice because you're going to grow up as an angry parent, you're going to be a resentful parent, you're automatically going to be at a deficit because you didn't have that child because you wanted to. You had that child to fulfill a purpose and you're already setting that child up for failure. So I would say to any parents out there, really think about having a child just to give your current child a sibling because it is so hard. And like I was telling you, either way it's hard. I had my kids really
Yeah.
close together. It's hard because it's like having two twins. If you wait a really long time to have your second child, then it's like starting over and you run the risk of your children not being close because they're too far apart in age.
Yeah.
So I would say just with marriage, with kids, do what's best for you in the moment. Don't think about the future because like I tell people when they want to come at me because I tell them like I don't think that every parent should try to give their child a sibling for that sole purpose. And the thing
Mhm.
that I try to tell them is like you can't tell the future. What if those kids grow up and they don't talk to each other? What if they have a bad
Mhm.
relationship? And then you had this child for the purpose of them being siblings and them being together and then maybe that's not the relationship that you're going to have that they're gonna have. And so you're just setting them up for failure. I really don't think that that's healthy. But having the one, I've heard from other moms, I'm not sure if this is true. 0 to 1 is beautiful. Honestly, that is very beautiful. 1 to 2 is like you're living in a nightmare. I've heard from other moms, I don't know if they're telling the truth, but I've heard that after 2 to 3, it's kind of like it gets easier because it's just
I've
kind
heard
of like
that
having
too.
I feel like I've heard from a lot of moms that are just like 2 to 3 is like honestly, it's easier.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too on Instagram, which like I'm not gonna test it out,
No,
but
I'm not gonna test it
I've
out.
but I've heard it a lot. And I have heard a lot of parents talk about how their experience going from 0 to 1 was the hardest because they had just like such a full life. Like they were people that traveled, they were people that had hobbies, they were people that had like their full life and they had to give up a lot to have kids. They talk about how that was the hardest because then when you go from 1 to 2, like, relatively know what to expect because every kid is different, but kind of how to get in the groove of like sleep training and how to, like what's the normal amount that kids eat at a certain age. Like you start to know a little bit more because you already had a kid. But I know for me, going from 0 to 1 was extremely hard because when my daughter was born, I remember I was in the hospital and I didn't believe it. I was like, there is no way that that just happened, that
I
I
can't
just had
believe
a
they just
baby.
let you leave with these kids.
Literally,
Like,
when they were
like
like,
how do you
okay,
know if I'm gonna be able to keep this child alive? Like that is still insane to me.
exactly. And that's
They should
something
give
that
you a
when
test or something.
I remember being in the hospital and after having my daughter, like, I was just kind of, like, in shock. I remember being in shock for, like, a really long time, and then it wasn't until I got home, I was like, "Okay, like, this is my life now. I have to be responsible for another human now." And I think for me, that was really hard because I was so young. Like, I was 22 when my daughter was born, and I remember I had her and for a long time, I thought, like, I just messed up my entire life. Like, my whole life is just messed up from now on because I decided to have a kid this young. And it took me a really, really, really long time to get back into, like, my groove of life. I remember for a long time, like, I didn't even wanna go out in public because I was like, "This kid is gonna be screaming. I have to take a stroller everywhere. I have to take the diaper bag everywhere. Like, I have to load her in the car, unload her from the car." Like, it was just a whole hassle that for a long time, I did not see the light of day. Like, I did not leave my
Yeah.
house for so long, and I remember telling my husband, like, "I don't even wanna leave the house," and I remember when my daughter was, like, I think it was when she started sleeping through the night, when she was, like, 4 months, 6 months old, I kind of started to realize, like, "Okay, like, I'm starting to get into my groove, like, I'm starting to find myself again," like, then I remember when I started feeling myself again, there goes the sleep regression, and then the
Yeah.
teething, and, like, everything hit again, and I was, like, back into, like, that deep pit in my soul where I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna die here, like, this
Yeah.
is just, like, the end of me." I remember I really had to, like, sit down with myself and accept I'm never gonna get back to myself because
Yeah.
that person doesn't exist anymore. Like, that person, I'm mourning her because she doesn't exist, like, there's no version of me anymore that exists that is not a mother. Like, now that it's just me for the rest of my life, and it was really hard to mourn that part of myself, and I think that's where I kind of understand people that say 0 to 1 is so hard because I had to rebuild who I am as a person because I wasn't myself anymore, and I didn't know who I was anymore. Like, if I didn't like to be with myself back then, really didn't like to be with myself now, and it comes with so much guilt. Like, I felt so guilty for such a long time because I really thought, this was a horrible mistake, and it's just the reality, like, I was struggling really hard with postpartum anger, and that's part of it, like, part of it is just I felt so much guilt and so much resentment. I didn't start feeling like a normal person again until my daughter was, like, a year old. Like, literally last month, I started feeling like I'm a
Well,
human again.
and that's why, like, obviously it's hard, like, it's all hard, right? And I totally understand what you're saying, but it's like, imagine the pit when you feel like you finally get back to yourself and then you start all
All
over
over
again. And then
again.
you have to start from the beginning because it's worse because now you don't only have one person to take care of, you have two. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's what I tell people when they are thinking about having kids next to don't do it is you will never not be a mom again.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell them, like, don't rush into it. Don't rush into, having kids because you feel like, and it's so funny because like in our culture, like having kids by 30 is like ancient, right? Like
Oh,
people start
yeah.
having kids when they're like 20. And so there's like this idea of like you want to have kids right away, but I always tell people I'm like, why rush it? Like you will always be a parent no matter what. I'm like, and people want to like they wanna contradict me and be like, "Oh, yeah, but eventually your kids will grow up." I'm like, "You're
But
still a
you're still a
parent. It
parent.
doesn't matter." I'm like, "My mom, we're all grown adults, most of us married, and when we have a problem, we still go to her. She still has to
Yeah.
fix our problems when we make mistakes and when we do things, and then she's had to, like, bail us out when we have problems." I'm like, "It doesn't matter." I'm like and when people tell me this, I'm like, "Okay, you're telling me picture this. I'm in Europe, gallivanting, living my life.
Mhm.
My kids are off to college. My kid calls me. I'm in trouble. You think I'm not gonna hop on a plane and come back? Like,
Yeah.
it's like I will always be a parent. There was no scenario for the rest of my life where I'm not gonna be a parent anymore. And even people who have lost kids, they're still parents.
Yeah.
They're grieving parents, which is the worst of all. I'm like, so don't rush into it because you think that, you have to rush because you're getting old or whatever X and Y reason. Like I would say wait until until the very last possible moment because there's no going back.
What's something that you wish someone would have told you about motherhood before you became a mom?
I honestly just wish someone were to tell me it's okay to feel unhappy being a mom. That's totally normal. It's totally normal to feel like this is hard. It's totally normal to feel like it's not fulfilling because it's
Mhm.
not. It's like 99% of the time, it's just hard. And I'll give you a perfect example that happens to me all the time. I work a lot. My husband works a lot. So sometimes I want to do something nice for my kids. And so take them to Target so they can pick out a toy and they're all excited. They pick out their toy. They're over the moon. They get home they want me to open the toy, they start playing, immediately start fighting. Immediately they're fighting over the toys, they're trying to grab them from each other, they break the freaking toy. They break the toy, and then my son is screaming bloody murder because the toy is broken and I can't fix it, and the other child is mad because he wants his toy and now the other one's broken, so they don't want to share. And I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I do something nice? I should just have not done anything nice. I should have just stayed home. And it's like, that's the thing about parenting. Like, you think it's gonna be this amazing, fulfilling feeling that it is so short lived. Like, those are just moments in a very long day. And there's all different types of days. There's days that are hard all day. There's days that are just going through the motions. You know, there's days where you get a little bit burst of like when your kid does something like really funny or cute and you're like, oh, wow, that is so adorable and it fills your heart, but those are just very short moments. The
Yeah.
reality is that 99% of the time, it's, you know, trying to get them to eat when they don't want to eat, or trying to get them to sleep when they don't want to sleep, or fighting with them, or trying to teach them how to be a decent human, or trying to teach them how to regulate their emotions. That's the reality of it. And it's okay to feel frustrated at your kids, and it's okay to feel like, what did I do? Or this isn't fulfilling for me, or this is hard. And that's an acceptable feeling because it is hard. You're trying to raise a whole human and trying to teach them how to live in this crazy world. And I think that for me, honestly, if it would have just been one person in my life to tell me it's okay that it's hard, doesn't mean you don't love your kids, that probably would have changed my life. But the reality is that nobody wants to admit that it's hard.
Answering the same question of what I wish someone would have told me early on or before I had kids, I think I would have wanted someone to tell me that most days are gonna look the same. Because when they're newborns, like, yeah, they sleep like 98% of the time. So like it's just like a lump. They don't really do anything
Yeah.
but cry and eat. But I think later on, when my daughter started like getting a routine and started like getting a routine with eating and sleeping and all of that, it was really hard for me. Like, it was really hard for me for every single day to look the same because
Mhm.
it just felt like one day that was just so long. One day that lasted like 100 hours, and I was like losing my mind. I was literally like, if I live the same day again, I'm not gonna make it. Like, I'm not gonna make it. But then you wanna mix it up and do something new and take your kid out, and they start screaming and they start throwing things and they poop themselves, and then you have to go change them in a public bathroom, and like you forgot your diapers and you don't have wipes, and like all of these things that happen when you're just trying to have a little bit of spark in your day that just destroys you even more. And then you get home and the day just kicked your butt and you want to take a nap, but your kid, it's their wake window, so they're not going to go to sleep. And I think all of that broke me. Like, it like killed a part of me that is never coming back. And I remember telling my mom about this, and I was like, I just feel really frustrated that every single day looks the same, and it kind of just like the repetition is really getting to me. And I remember she said, "Well, that's what being a mom is." And that just broke me even more. And I was like, well, now I have to suck it up because this is what being a mom is like. And I think having people just meet me with just such low empathy really killed me. I think that's the part that
Well,
killed me.
you either get that's what you asked for, or I did it and I survived, so you can do
Yeah.
it. So you get that, like, what do you like, how dare you complain? Like, we did it in
Yeah.
worse conditions and we made it, so you don't have a right to complain about it. I think it's one of two. Those are the one of
Yeah.
two responses that you can never get. But I have a question for you. I remember when you first had your daughter, and we're all sisters, and I remember like being a mom and asking you like, how are you doing, how is it being a mom? And you would tell me, it's great, she sleeps a lot, great, it's good, I'm getting the hang of it. And kind of just like, you never confiding in me to tell me like
Mhm.
how much you were really struggling. And like listening to Marco's episode and having him say like, oh yeah, sometimes I had to come home because like you needed me, and me
Yeah.
feeling like, well, you never told us that you were struggling. Like, why did you think that in those moments you just chose to default to, it's great, it's going great?
I think it was the same reason why other people in our life do it so that we survive. Like, for me, it was like, if I tell someone about it, then that makes it real. And that's what I did not want to confront. And honestly, it was like days because I remember when my daughter was really young and when she was like just barely born, it was hard, but it was doable. Like
Yeah.
it was hard and it was affecting me, but I was getting through it. But then I remember when she was like 2 or 3 weeks old that like the newness started wearing off and I started kind of sitting into like, okay, this is my
Yeah.
life now. And that was breaking me. Like, I remember sitting in my daughter's room, like in her rocking chair where she did not want to go to sleep and just crying while she cried. Like, we were crying at the same
Yeah.
time. And it was like synchronized crying. And I remember calling my husband and just being like, okay, you need to come home. Like, either you come home or I'm going to strangle this child or I'm just going to like throw myself off the balcony.
Yeah.
Like, I need someone to come here now. And I think in those moments, like, I didn't really wanna reach out to anyone because I think we grew up in just a household that we never really talked about our feelings, and we never really looked at each other for help, and I feel like even now, like, it's rare the times that we look for each other for help, and I really just didn't wanna accept that this was my life now.
That's like I would say that that's super on brand for you for coping. I remember one time you told me like, "Oh my gosh, my husband and I got into a fight." And I was like, "You guys fight?" Because it just like I just never ever see you guys fight and your husband is someone who's so passive or who looks so passive on the outside
Uh-huh.
that I was just so confused. I was like, "Wait, you guys fight?" And you
We
were like,
fight
"Oh,
all the
we
time.
fight."
We
And all I could hear in my head was that, like, murder song from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
And
Murder!
it just, like, made me laugh because I was like, we kind of like you said, like, we are sisters and we are close to a degree, but I think that a lot of, like, the issues in our life, we just kinda hold on to them
Yeah,
and we don't really talk about them to each other, which is, like, so unfortunate because we've all been 3 of us have been through marriage, 2 of us have been through having kids, and it's still so hard to
yeah.
admit, like, this is hard, and it's only getting harder. It doesn't feel like it's getting easier, and when people try to tell me, like, "Oh, it'll get easier when your kids are older," and I'm like, "I don't agree with
No.
that. I think it just gets harder."
But I'm gonna Uno reverse that question. Why, when you had kids, did you not tell anyone how you were feeling? But keep in mind, listeners, at this point, none of us had kids. You were the only one that had kids.
I think it's just the same reason, like, I was always met with I think the reason I never reached out for help was because everyone was so excited and, like, they just were
Mm,
so excited about this new baby, and it was, like, the most beautiful thing in everyone's life for such a long time that I didn't wanna be the one to bring it down. And I remember so vividly, like, the day that, you guys came to my house for champagne, and we were drinking, and this was, like, a couple months after my son was born, and my sister had bought me a bottle of Dom, and so we were gonna, celebrate, cheers with it, about the baby being born and stuff, and you guys all came over, and I was drinking, and I just broke, and I was just like, "This is so much harder
mhm.
than I thought it was gonna be, and, like, I, can't take it, I can't handle it. Because at that point, I wasn't working, I was only at home with the baby, and it was the same
Yeah.
scenario of yours, like, my husband would get home super late, and then, all he wanted to do was be with the baby because he hadn't been with the baby all day, and I just felt so alone, but and I mean, this is not, like I'm not trying to put this on anybody else, but even after that, no one ever reached out to ask me
Yeah.
like, "Hey, how are you doing with that?" Or "How are you doing, like, with those feelings and stuff?" And it was just because that's our culture. Like, our culture
Yeah.
is just, like, to stop people in their tracks when they start to open up about real things or about things that don't really go with, with what they think that motherhood is or with what marriage is, and I think I just had so much shame, and at that point, I had no understanding of what motherhood everyone hypes up motherhood to be this beautiful thing, so I didn't wanna be the one to be like, wait, this is not as beautiful as people say that it is. And I didn't want to be the one to go against that. And I would say it took me a really long time to finally like open up and be like, no, like this is really hard. And to be the person that I am now, who is like, no, this is hard. This is not beautiful. Very little
Yeah.
of it is beautiful. And it's super hard to do that. And even with marriage, like when people talk about, how beautiful, marriage is. And I'm like, the only thing that marriage and motherhood has taught me is I understand why people don't get married or don't have kids. I
That's
honestly understand it more. I understand more why people don't than why people do now that I'm a mom. And I think that
yeah,
even though that's hard, it makes me feel like that means I'm giving it my all, because if it's
that's
hard,
true.
it's because I'm doing the hard things to be a good mom and to be there for my kids and to do the things that maybe past moms from other generations didn't do, which is, be there and do the hard things and teach your kids and parent them instead of just letting them off to raise themselves.
I think this is like something that's so toxic, not just in our family, but in our culture, that after a woman has a baby, like they're seen as like a combo deal. It's like
Yeah.
that woman is no longer a woman. She's a woman with a child.
She's just a mom.
And she's just a mom. Yeah. And I think sometimes I see it more prevalently in our family that it's like, okay, well, if the kids aren't coming, then I don't even want to see you. Or
Yeah.
I think that's something that I I'm not hurt by, but really want to change within our family
No,
because
I am hurt by that. It offends me every time. Honestly, sometimes I just want to respond like, next time I'll just Uber the kids to you and I won't even come because it's like they don't even care about like it's like if I show up without my kids, like I should have just not shown up at all.
yeah. And I think that's something that and tell me if I'm not, but I feel like that's something I've slowly been trying to change even within myself
Yeah.
because like now when I go to your house, like I'll give you a hug before I'll give the kids a hug because like obviously it's your house. I'm there to see you, not your children. And like inviting each other to do things without the kids and inviting each other to do things that are like have nothing to do with children, like not talking about kids. Like when you see your best friend and
Yeah.
spends like the last 2 minutes of that interaction talking about your kids, like that's what I want. And I think that's something that I've told my husband that I really want to change within our family. And obviously it all starts with calling it out because like
Yeah.
sometimes they don't do it maliciously, but it still hurts. And that's something that I've been slowly trying to call out with our mom. And now I'll go to her house without the baby. Like if the baby is napping, I'll go without her. And sometimes she will say, well, you're not allowed to come to the house without the baby. And I'll just say, okay, then I won't come. That's fine.
Neither
I
of
just
us will
won't.
come.
Yeah.
Well, I think that something that I've really been trying to catch myself with because it's like so automatic is like when people show up at parties without their spouse and you're like, oh, where's your husband? Or where are your kids? It's
It's
something
the
that's
same
just like
thing. Yeah.
so automatic. It's like I'm a person. I'm allowed to go places without my husband. It's
Yeah.
like so it's something that I try not to do when I see like a woman or a man like without their spouse. I try to catch myself and not automatically ask them, "Oh, where's your
That's a good
spouse or
one.
where's your kids?" Because I feel like it's just as offensive. It's like
Yeah.
I'm allowed to do stuff without my significant other, but it's just something that, like you said, I don't think it's like most of the time, I don't think it's malicious. I think that just like you said, like we're just not seen as women anymore. We're just moms or what wives, and like how dare we go places without our significant other or without our kids? But it's like we also need a break too now, like something that I wanted to talk about was like coming into a new version of my marriage because like I feel like my
Mhm.
husband and I are so unconventional that we've kind of had to find a way to be happy with our life because we're both extreme lone wolves, and like there'll be times where like I'll book a class to Pilates and I just assume that he's gonna be home to take care of the kids so that I can go. He's like, I booked a hair appointment at the same time, like so now we have
Oh,
to because like we'd never consult each other to be like, hey, are you gonna be home so that I can do this? Like we just kind of each live our own separate lives and then just kind of like hope that the other person is gonna be there to accommodate when we
yeah.
need it. And I feel like from like before we had kids, we kind of started to try to understand like what it is that will make us happier. And I think that all just came down to not just seeing marriage as like this is a traditional marriage so that that's what I have to do. It's like you really have to look at your relationship and at your life and say like what is it that we want out of this relationship, and have to make those like uncomfortable decisions to like to have to accept making other people uncomfortable because of the way that you live. And I think
Yep.
that definitely with us, I remember like one of the things that we started doing early in our marriage was that we would each go on separate vacations by ourselves. So he would go
Yep.
on vacation by himself and I would go on vacation by myself. And so I remember very early when we started to do that, like people would be like, how are you going to let your husband go to Mexico by himself? And I'm like, why do you care? If it doesn't bother me, why does it bother you? And
Mhm.
it was all kind of with the underlying, like, oh, like, what if he cheats on you? I knew that's where it was coming from. And it's like, he can cheat on me here. He doesn't have to go to
Yeah.
Mexico to do that. You know, it's like, and it's like, why? And it's from a very early on, people would see that they wouldn't see that like well, they wouldn't take that well, but then it's like, why am I going to live my life according to your rules if your rules don't work for me in my marriage? And now that we're older and now that we kind of our life has gone in two completely separate directions, we really had to sit with ourselves and figure out like if we're going to make it, we have to figure out a way to make this relationship work for us. Because if we just go
Yeah.
with tradition and what a traditional marriage is, we're not going to make it because we're not traditional people. And so we really had to like sit down and understand what our goal was in our life and in our relationship. And so I think that like now we kind of come to the understanding that we are in this relationship to support each other. And that is the
Yeah.
bottom line. So if that means that he has to work less so that he can be home with the kids so that I can study and go to work and do the things that I need to do, then that's what that means. And it's like really coming together and being like, I have this goal and I want to reach it and I need your help. And so that means that you have to do these things for me so that I can work on my goals and vice versa. If there's a time where, there's been times where I want to do things, but he has goals that he set. So I have to put my goals on pause so that I can help him achieve his goals. And there's times where, like right now that I'm studying and it's so hard and I understand the sacrifices that we have to make. It's like he comes home from work and he has to cook dinner and he has to take care of the kids so that I can work and study. And every day, like you said, it's the same thing. And I know that he starts to go crazy. And after I passed my first exam, he was like, I could see that he had just about had it, just every single day, like this craziness of the kids, like every day is just worse than the day before. And just when you think that they have their routine down and you have it down, it's like they go through a regression and then it's like they turn into these whole different people and you have to deal with it. And I had to sit him down and I had to say, look, I appreciate that you're doing this for me so that I can reach my goals, but this isn't like a couple months. This is years. This is years that I have to do this. And it has to be the same for years. So I need you to tell me right now if you're not going to be able to do this, because I'm not going to spend my time doing something just for you to back out and me be left with all of the studying. And then like halfway through, you tell me that you can't do it anymore. This has to be a decision that we make together. Even though it's something
Mhm.
for me, we both have to be in agreement because we're both making sacrifices. And so he kind of was like, okay, like, yeah. And I think it's like, it's one thing to say that you're going to support your partner, and it's a whole different thing to actually do it
Yep.
when it comes down to it. So, we have to have those conversations and just be like, sometimes there isn't time for both of us to have what we want. Sometimes it has to be a compromise. Sometimes I have to lay low and let him do his thing. And so now we are literally just two people who live these completely different lives, like separate lives. Like he's out doing his thing. I'm out here doing my thing. He has these hobbies that I don't agree with, hobbies that make me very uncomfortable, but I have to just give him the respect and just be like, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your free time. I just want you to know that your hobbies make me uncomfortable. And so I just would rather not participate or talk about them with you.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna respect that you wanna participate in those hobbies if you can respect that I don't wanna know anything about them or have anything to do with it. And we can still have a very happy marriage where we just come together to just help each other get in life where we want to be. And even though that's not traditional and it's very crazy because we just kind of both live our life and then just come together,
Mhm.
when we need each other, that's what works for us. And, like, I know people think it's very weird, and people from the outside might think that we don't have that, like, connection or, like, that closeness, but it's like, that's what works for us now, and maybe later something will work for us later, and we just have to
Yeah.
evolve with it and, like, not not tie ourselves down to any one thing if it's not working for us.
Yeah. That's very interesting to hear the kind of marriage that you guys have now because I know that's super different than the marriage that you guys used to have. And I think the same. Like, I obviously, my husband and I are completely different people than when we met. Like, we met when we were like literally kids. We were teenagers when we met. And I think now, as parents and as husband and wife more than anything. Cause I'm like, first it's us and then it's the kids. Because if we're not in line, like if we're not in a healthy marriage, then our kids are already gonna be in a deficit.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what matters first. And I was like, and every marriage is different. I was like, there's no like blueprint to marriage. Like everyone makes their own marriage work. And right now, like we're at a point in our marriage when we really have to sit down and talk about what the next years are going to look like because I'm almost done with school. So I'm going to be working an insane amount of hours and I have to do my internship, which is unpaid. So we have to really be there for each other and we have to really know that we can rely on each other. And then, like you just said, like we're going to be living completely different lives. Like we're just going
Yeah.
to come together at night, talk for 15 minutes, and then go to sleep. Like that's going to be the reality of our life. And it's something that I'm super nervous for. But like I told my husband, like, it's just a moment in time. Like, this is something that's gonna be different in 5 years from now, like 10 years from now. Like, I was editing his episode, and I remember you asked him or I asked him, "What does your life look like in 10 years?" And he said, "I wanna be on a beach." And I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, like, let's do it, but we're not gonna get there unless we get through this." And this is the hard part. Like, this is right now, we're in the trenches of having kids, and we're both in this situation of adjusting our careers while raising kids, while running a home, while doing all of these other stuff. And at the end of the day, like something that I would say to someone that is either about to have kids or have kids already and don't know how to feel about it, to be honest with myself and to be honest with my husband, that was super hard. And it's something that you're just going to have to learn because you have to be honest with yourself on how you feel about having kids. You have to be honest with yourself about how you feel about your marriage, because if we're not honest in a marriage, it just doesn't work. Like when you just said right now about having your husband really know what this commitment was gonna be, like that's honesty, and a marriage does not work without it. And even if you aren't together all day, every day, and see each other 24/7 and come home and have these long conversations, like, at the end of the day, at least you're honest with each other, and you have that, like, one check-in a day of 5 minutes after the kids stop screaming, and you've had dinner, and, like, you're finally at rest. But, like, that's my advice for someone. Be honest. And if someone asks you how you're doing,
Be
answer
honest.
honestly. Be honest. Like, if it's someone that you trust and it's someone that you know isn't gonna just deflect your answer, be honest with that person. Because the same way that maybe you're longing for someone to understand you, maybe that person wants you to confide in them and wants to understand and wants to be there to support you. Because both of us have gone through being being not being honest about the realities of being a mom, and that just makes it harder. That makes it harder
Yeah,
because
and I
then we
would
feel
say
shame.
also, like, don't shut down if the person you confide in shuts you down. Don't stop
Yeah.
being honest because it's so
Yep.
easy, like us, like, if one person asks me how I'm doing and they hit me with everything happens for a reason, it just makes me want to be so small, and it makes
Yeah.
me want to curl back up into my ball and never trust or confide in anyone ever again. And I would say, don't do that. Just keep being honest, because the more like, if every time you practice it, if someone asks you and you're honest, you're building that relationship with yourself to be
Yeah.
able to be honest with yourself. Because if
Mhm.
you make yourself small to make other people feel comfortable, you're just doing yourself a disservice. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you're the one who's going to suffer internally. And your kids don't want that, and your spouse doesn't want that either. Yeah, I just have one more question, because this is
Yeah.
a problem that I have in my marriage about love
Let's hear it.
languages. So I actually
Ooh.
looked this up, and 99% of the problems I have in my marriage are because my husband and I have very different love languages. And so what I would perceive as him, you know, wanting to see me suffer, wanting to hurt me in some way, was just him not knowing what my love language was. And
Mhm.
something that I've been trying to practice in my marriage now is to give my spouse the benefit of the doubt, and to just not automatically assume that what he does is because he's intentionally trying to hurt me. And that's something that has really helped me, because being able to see him with those eyes of like, oh, if I asked him to do something and he didn't do it, I'm not automatically going to assume it's because he just wanted to make me angry and enrage me. It's probably because he forgot, or because he was too busy, or because he thought he would get to it later and then he ran out of time.
Mhm.
And so that's something that's really helped me in my marriage, to not automatically like go to the worst case scenario, and also not hold it over him, to just address it. So just be like, "Hey, I asked you to do this and you didn't do it." And then just have a conversation like a normal person, instead of exploding 3 months
Yeah.
later because he didn't take out the trash. So my husband and I have very different love languages. So the love languages are acts of service, quality time, words of
Mhm.
affirmation, physical touch, and receiving gifts. So
Yes.
for me, my love language is acts of service. So I'm like, hey, if you see that I'm super busy with work and you go to the grocery store, buy groceries, and make dinner, that for me is like, hallelujah. Like,
Yes.
I could not ask for more, honestly. And for him, it's like sometimes he'll be like, "Oh, hey, what do you want for dinner?" And that question just offends me so much, because I'm
Hate that
like,
question.
if you see that I'm busy working a 12-hour day, why can't you just take it upon yourself to just decide? Because for me, the person that I am,
Yep.
I would rather eat whatever's available than to actually have to make a decision of what I want to eat. So it's like,
Same.
instead of, he thinks he's doing something nice for me by making dinner, but actually you're only taking 50% of the responsibility, because I still have to tell you what to make and what to buy at the grocery store. You're actually only making the food. So you're
Yeah.
actually not helping me, right? But
Mhm.
for him, when I started to give him the benefit of the doubt, I started to see that it's like, okay, well, I don't want to make something that you don't like because you're working a long day, and I don't want to make something and then for you not want to eat it. And then it's like you just had this really long day. Now you have to eat something you don't want, So
Mhm.
it's like giving him the benefit of the doubt that he's not just trying to enrage me, that there's probably a reason why, because
Mhm.
I know him to be a good person and I don't think he's a malicious person. And so I started to notice that with him, and this is just wild speculation, that his love language is words of affirmation, because we would always get into fights about how he's like, you don't even care about me. Like, if I don't text you, you'll go like 5 days without talking to me. And I'm like, well, because I'm busy. Like, and for me, it's like, if I'm still here, you can assume that I still love you. I don't have to
Yeah.
tell you all day, every day, I love you. I think it's just assumed and it's unspoken, but he really wants me to tell him like every day, "Hey, good morning. How are you? How's your day going? I love you. I'm thinking of you." And that for him is like the reassurance that like, I'm thinking about him. That for him is his love language, and something. And for a long time, I'm like, I don't have time to text you. I'm like doing all these million
Yeah.
other things. But it's like really meeting him with that same compassion and just being like, that's what he needs to show him that I love him. So, hey, I'll just take that 3 seconds out of my day to text him, "Hey, have a good day. I love you. I'm thinking of you. Can't wait to see you when you get home." And I think
Mhm.
that has fixed about 80% of our fights.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from what I've learned in school, like, the hard part about a marriage is that you love someone the way you wanna be loved, and then that person loves you the way they wanna be loved. So then you don't really feel the love because it's not your love language, and that is copy and paste the same problem I have with my husband. Like, literally, my love language is acts of service. Like, if you do something without me having to tell you or remind you, that is my way of hearing "I love you."
Yeah.
That is my way of knowing that you really, really love me. And his is the same, words of affirmation. And that is something that is so hard for me.
Yeah, it's so hard.
It is so hard for me to tell him, "I love you, I appreciate you, and have a good day." Like, those words never come out of my mouth. They never do. And it's not until I really stop and think about it that I'm like, "Oh my god, I haven't told him I love you in like 3 months."
Yeah.
And but it's like, if I'm still married to you, that means I love you, like, it's
Yeah, go
implied.
here. You could just assume until I tell you otherwise that I love
Yeah,
you.
and it's the same way, like, we have the same problem, and it's something that we've really had to work on, and it's so hard, like, man, is it hard because I'll forget to say I love you, he'll forget to take out the trash, and then, like, we're each mad at each other, but in reality, like, it's just something that you have to learn at a default. Like, your default setting has to be to love the other person the way they wanna be loved, but in reality, that is so hard, but that'll
Yeah.
fix, like you just said, it'll fix 80% of your
It'll fix
problems.
so many like, between just loving each other the way each of you wanna be loved and having communication to just be like, "Hey, what you did hurt me, what you said hurt me, or you didn't take out the trash like I asked you to, like, that really hurt my feelings." Just having communication and understanding each other's love language, like, if I would have known that, like, that would have fixed most of my problems, and it's just and that's the thing,
Yeah,
like, you don't know what you don't know, and we lived so many years in this default setting of just me being so angry and him just trying to tiptoe around me in order not to set me off that it's like now like having to be so uncomfortable and really like my, change my change my mentality to my default being like I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt from thinking that he's just trying to make my life miserable. That in itself is just so
yeah.
hard.
My advice for anyone who has a partner, who's married, in a relationship, my advice is immediately take a love language quiz and an attachment style quiz because each person has their own attachment style. There's anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, disorganized attachment, and secure attachment. So no one is secure. That's like the most healthy, amazing attachment style where like you're perfect. No one is that. But if you're anxious attachment, then that means that that if you're away from your partner, you're immediately anxious and you seek comfort only in your partner, and they're the only person that can make you feel better, and they're the only person that really understands you. And then there's avoidant attachment where you avoid intimacy or you avoid getting really deep with someone because you don't want to get hurt, or you avoid telling someone your real feelings because you're scared they're not going to understand. And then there's disorganized attachment where you don't even know what you feel. Like, you want to be close to them, but you can't really be close to them. And, you want to love them, but you can't really tell them that you love them. And everyone has a different attachment style and they all clash because, for example, I am avoidant. I don't like to talk about my problems. I don't
Yeah.
like to show love. I don't like to explain to someone my day when they ask me how your day is going. Like, I don't like that. And my husband is anxious attachment. Like, he loves to be with me and he loves to spend time together and loves to talk about his day and go into deep conversations and do all of that when it's like the end of the day and I just want to go to sleep. And we're just so different in that sense that it used to make it really hard to understand the other person, but now we're like slowly starting to get there where we understand how the other person is, because it goes to the same thing we talked about at the beginning of the episode. The past matters. because
Yeah.
that is the reason you are who you are. That is the reason why you wanna be loved a certain way, why you can't love someone a certain way. Like, I personally can't tell my husband that I love him because I never heard growing up that someone loved me, so I don't know how to say that. It just makes it really hard if you don't become vulnerable with your partner and really wanna understand them.
Well, like, I can't like, when he asks me how I'm doing, I can't tell him because we grew up in a house where we didn't
Mhm.
talk about how we were feeling in an honest way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, talking to him about that and telling him, like, "It's really hard for me to be honest with you because I never grew up in an environment where I could be honest, and so when you so, yeah, I need you to ask me 50 times across 3
Yeah.
days what's wrong
Same.
for me to actually break and tell you what's wrong because I'm afraid that when I tell you what's wrong, I'm afraid about how that's gonna be received." And so it's
Yeah.
like, yes, talking about the past is important, but do people ever ask you if you regret getting married?
They don't ask me if I regret getting married, but they do ask me, like, if I wish I would have had kids later in life, which is funny because they asked me the one thing that I can't change. Like, I
I
can
know.
change being married. I can just get divorced. But no, people ask me if I regret having kids this early in my life, and I find that question to be so inappropriate
Yeah,
because
well, what are you
I
supposed
it's
to
like
answer?
me.
What do you
Yeah,
answer? And
I mean,
what
I
do you answer when
answer
you
I mean, I'm honest. I'm like, I would have rather had kids later in life. Like, I don't say I regret it, but I do say, like, I wish I would have had kids later and given I wish I would have given myself a chance to just be married and not have to worry about kids while being married. So, I mean, I'm honest. Like, I'm not one of those people that would be like, oh, having kids revolutionized my life and it's the most inspiring and wonderful, beautiful
if
thing
you
that's ever
wouldn't have
happened to me.
gotten pregnant, when do you think you would have gotten married?
Honestly, I it's so funny how things happen, but I always wanted to get proposed to the day of my graduation. Like,
Oh,
that was, like, always a dream of mine. I always wanted to get engaged on my graduation and have kids at 25, which, I mean, I wasn't that far off, like, 3 years
yeah,
early, but 3 years makes a huge difference, to be
yeah,
honest, but, I mean, that's the truth. Like, it sounds really weird because I'm not a lovey-dovey person like that,
yeah.
but I did always wanna get engaged at my
Oh,
graduation. I
that's so
did
nice
always
that
wanna
it
get
worked out that
proposed to.
way.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird how things work out, but I did wanna get proposed to at my graduation, and I did wanna have kids younger because I always knew I wanted to have kids on the younger side, not so young, like 20, 22, but younger. But, I mean, honestly, things worked out the way I wanted to, just flipped. Like, I
Yeah,
had kids before I got married, and I always wanted it to be the other way, but, I mean, maybe I wanted it to be that way because society always shows you you're supposed to get married and then have kids.
yeah.
But what about you? Do people ever ask you if you regretted
Oh,
getting
yeah,
married?
all the time. I mean, I think when I got married, there wasn't one person in my life who told me it was a good idea to get married, and I think everyone in my life at that point was trying to talk me out of it, and I never understood why, and I still remember this. Everything I'm talking about, my dad is so off brand for him. People are gonna think that he's, like, a different person that he actually is, but I remember, like, there was one day where he came home. I was about to leave for school, and he came to the house, and he was like, "Oh, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he was like, "Oh, I just kinda notice and feel that you're not very excited about the wedding, and I just want to tell you that you don't have to get married if you don't want to." He
Oh
was
my
like, "If you wanna
gosh.
cancel this and you want to plug it like, if you just wanna cancel all of this and you just wanna say, 'I don't wanna get married anymore,' I support you, and if you don't wanna tell people, I'll tell like, you don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to go through with this just because you're engaged." And I was like, "No." And at the moment, like, I wasn't because I wasn't excited about the wedding because I didn't want a wedding. It wasn't something that I wanted for me, and so it was so stressful. Like, I was in college, broke, trying to plan this 300-person wedding that I didn't even want in the first place, and I went out and I bought this, like, $1,000 dress that's more than I made in, like, 2 months. So it's like it was, like, so stressful for me because it's like, it's like the saying goes, like, "The marriage is for you and the wedding is for the family," and so
Yep.
I didn't want the wedding, but, our family is so, like, over the top, so, like, I knew that that was, like, a non-negotiable, and my husband's family is really big also. He has a lot of family, and so I knew that the wedding, like, it had to be a minimum 300 people. And it was so stressful as a 20-year-old trying to plan a wedding. Like, I didn't want any of it. And so I wasn't excited about the wedding. I was excited about the marriage. And so I could understand how maybe it was interpreted as me, like, not really, like, wanting to go through with it, but kind of feeling obligated to, but that was never the case. I was always very excited about getting married, and I think that everyone after that, anytime anything would happen, they were like, "Oh, see, we told you not to get married, but you still did it." And it was always so much negativity that I never felt like in a safe space to ever be honest about how much I was struggling, because a lot of the reason I was struggling was because of my mental health and because I didn't really have the language and I didn't have anyone support because everyone told me not to do it and I did it. So I didn't feel like I could turn to anyone for help. And I think a lot of people try to like push on me like the narrative that like if I wouldn't have gotten married, what would my life had have been like? But over the past couple of months, I've pondered a lot about it and I don't regret it. I don't regret getting married because the reality is that in the mental state I was in no condition to live a happy life at all whatsoever. So it's like, even if I wouldn't have gotten married, I don't think I would have gone off to college. I don't think I would have lived, on campus. I don't think I would have had this like live abroad or travel or do I don't think I
Yeah.
would have done that because the way that I grew up, like I just seeked like comfort in, someone's presence and having someone there for me,
Yeah.
and having a person who was there for me, to take all I've ever wanted in my life is for someone to take care of me, for someone to be there for me and comfort me and be a safe person I can turn to when things in my life, don't go the way I wanted them to, or when I make up stories in my head about how, my anxiety gets to me and I start to, you know, make up tragedies that aren't really happening. And so like when I when I met my husband, I wasn't in a really good place mentally, but I do think that people wanna think that I would have been so much happier if I wouldn't have gotten married so young, but I honestly don't think I would have been. I don't know where I would have been, but I don't think that I would have been in a happier place, and my husband being the person that he is, like, he's always met me with such compassion and, like, he's let me live a free life, and so it's like, yeah, I didn't get to go off to college and party and do all these things, but I mean, every year for a couple years, we would go to the beach and party for 10
Yeah.
days straight and just get drunk off of, like, reggaeton and live this, like, life that it's like, I still got everything. I still got to do
Mhm.
everything, like, even now, like, I have kids and I have my husband, and if I'm like, "Hey, like, I just need a break. I need to go somewhere and be alone with my girls," and he's like, "Okay, let's make it happen," and it's never an argument. It's like, he always tells me, like, "If you need a break, like, he just went to Mexico for 2 weeks, and he was like, "Oh, should I take one of the kids?" I'm like, "No, you go, you have fun, you live your life, go off with your friends, and when I need my alone time, just meet me with the same compassion," And I think
Yeah.
that it's really, like, easy to say, like, "Oh, yeah, I would have been so happy if I wouldn't have gotten married so young. I would have lived such a full life," but I don't think that that would have been the case.
I'm so interested now that you said that. How would you react to one of your kids being 20 and saying that they wanna get
No.
married?
No. No.
Really?
No. I would not. I would This is something that I really struggle with because the way that I am now coming into the type of parent that I wanna be, I want them to live whatever life they wanna live. I want them to figure out what makes them happy and to live their life that way, right? If that means not going to college, if that means starting on a business, if that means going to school for art, it'll be hard,
Mhm.
but I wanna support them. I wanna support them. I want them to find happiness in their life. But if they came to me and told me at 20 that they wanna get married or that they're having a baby, I don't think I could come back from that. I don't know how I would react, but it wouldn't be a good reaction. The thing is that I don't regret getting married because of the mental state that I was in. I don't think that I would have survived in life if I wouldn't have had my husband. And that's only because he's a genuinely good person. He was never an abusive person. He was someone who really supported me when I didn't deserve to be supported because I treated him very badly. And I have a lot of shame around that. And just him being the person that he is, like seeing me for someone that I could be potentially if I got help. He's the one who really helped me be the person that I am today. And we support each other and we just kind of made the best out of a bad situation. We did. But
I
for my
feel you.
kids, I wouldn't want that. I really wouldn't want that because we went through a lot. And I think that even if I would have waited, like if I would have just met him and we would have kept dating and I would have at least waited until I graduated from college, I think the quality of life that we would have had would have been so much better. But I think in that moment, all I was thinking was like, I just want to be with this person 24/7 so that they can
Yeah.
support me and so that they can be there for me. But then the reality is that we're broke, both working, 12-hour days, and we barely have time to be there for each other. So it was like living alone all over again, but just having to answer to someone all the time.
Yeah.
So it was just like not really the best of it was just a bad situation for both of us. And I think that it wasn't because we didn't have love for each other, but it was just because we had no stability at all whatsoever. And I don't want that for my kids. I want them to get married when they're like 40 or 50 years old, or maybe just like, I mean, also I am to the opinion that you don't have to get married to be able to love
Yeah,
someone and live with them and have
same.
kids with them. And I think that it'll be really hard if that's what they decide, but I hope that the culture moves away from normalizing that by the time that they get there.
I completely agree. I think I would actually have an aneurysm if one of the kids said that they were getting married at 20. I think I would just keel over and die.
Well, it's funny because like how would you react if your daughter came to you 6 months before her graduation and told you she was pregnant?
I think I would have an aneurysm or a stroke. Something would happen to me that I would end up in the hospital.
I think I would have a stroke.
Yeah. I honestly don't think I would recover from that. I think emotionally, mentally, I would never recover from that. And I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to be an open mind kind of mom and be like, yeah, I'm going to help you and I'm going to be there and I'm going to support you. I really don't think I would be like that. And it's shameful for me to say because I want to be a very accepting mom, but I really, really, really don't think I would be like that if my daughter told me she was pregnant.
Well,
Or
it puts it into perspective because it's like when my parents, because I never talked to them about like me getting married, so it kind of came as like a shock to them, like,
yeah.
like what? Like you just started dating this guy and then now you're telling me that you're getting married, and I just wanted them to meet me with such acceptance, and like I didn't understand why they were so angry with me. And then now, like, you asking me that question, I'm like, I don't think, like,
Yeah,
it would
no.
be so hard for me to
Yeah.
react in a positive manner if my son at 20 years old came to me and told me that he was getting married with a girl he just met 6 months ago.
But it all goes back to this idea that it starts in the home. Like for example, like if we would have grown up in a home that's like, everyone is so united and like everyone just feels so supported and loved and cared for, like emotionally and mentally cared for, like not just physically and financially because mentally and emotionally is important too. Like if we would have grown up in an environment that felt like that, maybe you wouldn't have felt the need to get married so young so that someone would always be there to support you. And I'm the same way. Like, if I wouldn't have been looking for that love and looking for that connection with someone, I wouldn't have gotten pregnant at 22. Like, that is just something that I truly believe starts in the home. And for example, my best friend grew up in a home like that, like where they were all so supportive of each other and were always there for each other and loved each other unconditionally. And she is now 25 and she's like, I am okay if I never get married because my family is so supportive of me and I find
Yeah.
that love within them. And it all starts with us. Like it literally all starts with the relationship that we have with our kids because I am very sure that if our kids feel love and support and feel like we're always there for them and will support them, whatever, they'll live a whole happy and fulfilling life.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hope for them. I mean, I just want them to get a chance to live life on their terms without having to
Mhm.
answer to anyone, not me, not their spouse, not their
Yeah.
kids. I just really want them to have the opportunity to do that because I feel like, I mean, I never did. And we joke about it. My dad jokes about it all the time. Like, you live with your parents and then you get married, you go from one prison to another. Like, you never
Yeah.
get time to actually be a person. Just you go from living with your parents to living in a house with your spouse to having kids, where it's like now, like, I grab my bag and my 4-year-old's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" Like
I'm going
I'll go
out.
wherever I want. And he's like, he'll be like, "Where are you?" Like every time I pick up my keys, he's like, "Where are you going?" And like I have to answer to a 4-year-old. And it's like I never got a chance to like just be a person who just is just me
Yeah.
and just out there living life on my terms. Like I never got to do that. And it kind of comes to you later where it like if you don't have those conversations with your partner, it builds up as resentment because I know for a long time
Yeah.
I resented my husband because I felt like I missed out on life and I missed out on this part of life and I'm never going to get that time back. But then having that conversation with like my husband and being like, I don't want our marriage to be based on resentment. Like, I don't want you
Yeah.
to be resentful towards me, and I don't want to be resentful towards you. So, how about we just live life on our terms? And as long as we respect each other and we respect our rules of our marriage, I don't see why there's a reason why we can't just live our life exactly how we want it. And that's exactly what
Mhm.
we do. It's like if he wants to go out with his friends to Mexico for the weekend, like fine, we'll make it work. And January is my busiest time of year. And every year it's super hard, but that's the time he wants to go. So I make it work. And when I want to go out and be free or I want to go to dinner with you and not talk about kids, or when we want to go out to the club and we just want it to be us, like he meets me with that same compassion. And I just kind of like look at it from the perspective of like, if we want it, we'll make it work. And
Yeah.
even though it's really hard with kids because there's a whole like parkour scheduling you need to do and like you have to like who's going to be with the kids and how long and when's the nanny going to get here and it's really really hard, but we make it work because I never want my husband to feel like, "Oh, I couldn't do that because I'm married," or "I couldn't do that
Yeah.
because I have kids." Like I never want to feel that resentment towards my kids or my husband. So, I mean, obviously there's things that maybe right now in this moment I can't do, but one day I'll be able to do them and I just have to look towards that future. But if there's something I want to do now and there's a way to make it work, like I really want to do that because at the end of the day, I want to have a happy home. I want my husband to be happy when he comes home. I want to be happy when I come home. I want my
Yeah.
kids to be happy when they come home. Like I just want I want at the end of the hard day, I want to create that safe environment that we never had. And not just for them, but for myself too, because after a long day of school or work or whatever, like I want to know. And like, I think we talk about this a lot. Like sometimes when we go to parties and people say things that are rude or out of pocket, and I'm just like, okay, bye. I'm going home now where I can do whatever I
Yep.
want and I can be free and I don't have to worry about pissing off my husband or I don't have to worry about, living under anyone's rules but my own. So it's like, and that's really hard to do, but I think it just all comes down to just communication and just being honest with yourself, being honest with your partner. And if your partner really wants to see you happy, then you'll come to a compromise and you'll find something that works for both of you. And it's not about winning or about getting one up on the person or getting your
Mhm.
way and throwing a fit. It's about coming to a compromise that works for everyone. Well, thanks for listening. Make sure to like, follow, and give us a 5-star review if you're liking the podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram. We share behind the scenes photos and updates after every episode. And if you're interested in being a guest, the link is in our caption and Instagram bio. New episodes drop every Monday. See you next week on Choices Were Made.
Bye.
Bye.